Hey everyone. Welcome back for the 5th part of the Jinchuuriki's brother. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the rest of the story is already out over there for you guys, along with about 30 other different stories you can enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 32, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 3. At a rebel-conquered outpost in Kyuubi territory, around a month after Naruto joining. Alright, men, load everything of value. Kunai, scrolls, letters, equipment, money, everything. Ao ordered the rebel shinobi with him. Now that was an interesting way to use a shoulder blade, Kimimaro-kun. A+ on creativity. Naruto whistled, impressed. Thank you, Naruto-sama. I'm honored to have been brought along for the outpost raid. I've heard much from Haku-san here. The teen replied, as he pulled an axe made from his shoulder blade, out of a dead sentry's skull. I gotta admit, I was wrong about how useful seals could be. I can't believe this little piece of paper holds more water than a freaking water tank. Suigetsu remarked as he formed back from his water state. Naruto smiled as he looked at the team of teens he had formed to infiltrate the outpost and open up the gates for the main force of rebels. They had a ton of potential. It was scary how skilled they already were. The sensei in him wanted to help them reach their full potential, despite them not being from Konoha. Haku gently spoke to Naruto from behind. Naruto-sama? May I have a word with you in private? Naruto wondered what Narumi's friend needed to say to him with privacy. He ordered the two boys on his team to help loot the place. Sure, Haku-chan. Follow me. The two headed to a different room that had already been looted, save for the larger furniture, which the rebels didn't need right now. So, what's up? Naruto asked as he sat on the edge of a table. Haku remained quiet for a few seconds, as she tried to figure out how to phrase what she wanted to ask, before speaking quietly. I've been thinking recently, me being unable to fight well in close range has really been holding back what I can do. I'm always left in relative safety to provide support, while others risk their lives to fight. I want to be able to fight alongside my friends, my comrades, and fight alongside Zabuza-sama. I know you're not from Kyuubi, and you're only here temporarily, but do you think you can train me? Or at least give me some tips or ideas on what I can do? I've asked Zabuza-sama before, but he didn't want me to fight up close, so he didn't help me. Naruto rubbed his chin as he thought. Close range, huh? Let me see what I can think of, he mumbled to himself as he began to rack his brains for some ideas. You're quick, but not very strong. Precision is the name of your game. Maybe a sword? But a katana is way too clunky for you. Nah, forget it. Maybe a tanto? I don't know. You seem to be more of the stabby type, rather than a slasher. It would work well with your precision and knowledge of human anatomy. If we could get some sort of giant stabbing senbo. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened. Of course. He had just the thing. He had forgotten about it ever since he picked it up in a Megakure on that mission he went on with Itachi all those years ago. I can't believe I forgot about this, Naruto shouted out in excitement as he pulled his sleeves back and looked over the many storage seals he had on his body, trying to remember which one held the item he was looking for. If I recall. It should be this one. Naruto hummed to himself as he reached a storage seal on his outer bicep. Haku watched in confusion, as she watched Naruto talk to himself and go through several strange seals which were on his arm. Naruto channeled a small bit of chakra into the seal, and summoned up a scroll. He unrolled the scroll on the table he was sitting on, and began to trace through the different sections with his finger. Jutsu scrolls, extra gear, disguises, furniture from Ame, ration bars from 5 years ago? 7? Gotta get rid of that. The new ones are so much tastier. Equipment. Here we go. Naruto perked up when he reached the right scroll. He finally unsealed the item he had been searching for. I think I found just the thing that could help you. Naruto presented the item with a wide smile on his face. Haku took the long, thin, guard-less rapier-like sword from Naruto's hand. She observed the sword with curious eyes. It was a long, thin, diamond-section sword, that tapered to a needle-like point. At the end of the handle was a bit of revealed ninja wire with a hook attached. It appeared that the entire handle held a giant spool of retractable ninja wire inside. Haku lifted up the sword by the handle, and gave it a couple swings and stabs in the air. It was lightweight and flexible. It felt perfect in her hands. "Thank you, Naruto-sama. This is perfect," she said with a brilliant smile that reminded Naruto of Narumi, who he had been missing. "But what is this?" she asked. Naruto gave her a grin. "Zabuza might be able to give you a better answer to that." "At the Mizukage Tower. That's the 6th strategic outpost we lost to the rebels this month. Somebody please explain to me what the hell is going on, or there'll be heads rolling." Literally. The angry Yondaime Mizukage, Yagura, threatened his top officers in the war room. "They're able to get to places in such a short time, that it's impossible for us to estimate any sort of time of travel for them. They keep popping up unexpectedly, and wreak havoc amongst our men. We currently have no idea how they're managing to pull this off," one officer explained. "Even worse is the fact that they somehow know our movements before we even make them. Seeing as none of our outposts have reported any missing messages or scrolls, it might mean we have a serious spy problem here, rather than them intercepting our letters," another one theorized. "They've been much more coordinated as of late. Until this last month, their lack of communication was their Achilles heel when it came to their strategy of hiding their forces in various locations, but they've been able to turn that around 180, and use their scattered forces to their advantage, using them as remote operation centers where they send out coordinated strikes from multiple areas to hit different locations at the same time." Yagura listened carefully, as he contemplated what he should be doing. "I want a full sweep of our men. Find out who these spies are, and kill them secretly, so the other spies don't find out. Also, go to the prisons, and try to find any prisoners who are willing to become informants. Torture them and threaten their families if you have to. We need to figure out how they're managing to get information on us, how they're communicating, and how they're moving so quickly. If we want to make plans, we'll need information." The officers in the room nodded and saluted the young Mizukage, before the meeting ended, and they left to follow their orders. "I'll clean this earth of you filthy bloodline freaks, if that's the last thing I do," Yagura growled to himself, alone in the war room. "I'll pay you all back for what you did to me." At the rebel HQ. "Our shinobi on Crescent Atoll are requesting supplies in food, kunai, shuriken, and medicine, Mei-sama," Naruto reported to Mei as he walked in after returning from his most recent raid. "Got it. Ow, make sure we send some extra supplies along with our orders to Crescent Atoll," Mei ordered. "Hi, Mei-sama." Ao saluted Mei and left to carry out her orders. "I gotta say, your shadow clone communication system is turning out to be quite useful, Naruto-kun," Mei purred out to Naruto. Naruto had taken to sealing in 10 shadow clones inside scrolls, and sending them to different hidden rebel bases, to take advantage of the memory returning aspect of the shadow clones to create a communication system. The remote bases would simply need to unseal a clone, tell the clone what they wanted to say, then dispel the clones. Naruto would then relay the message to Mei. Naruto's hand-picked team, Haku, Kimimaro, and Suigetsu, walked in behind him. "We're done unloading the cargo, Naruto-sama," Kimimaro reported. Zabuza's eyes almost bulged out of their sockets, and Mei's one visible eye widened when they saw the sword strapped on Haku's waist. "Haku, where did you get that sword from?" Zabuza asked in shock. Haku unstrapped the sword and handed it to Zabuza. "Naruto-sama gave it to me when I asked him to help me find a solution for close-range fighting." "Do you have any idea what this is? What this means to our village?" Zabuza asked Haku. Haku shook her head. "Should I, Zabuza-sama? This is Nuabari, one of the 3 missing legendary swords of the mist. The last person known to have it was Kushimaru, before he vanished," Zabuza exclaimed before turning to Naruto. "How do you have this sword?" he asked as he narrowed his eyes. "I was on a mission, and I found it in a storehouse in Amigakure. I recognized the sword so I took it, but it didn't really fit my style, so I never got around to using it," Naruto explained. "Do you know how valuable this sword is? Yagura would have paid a fortune to get his hands on this sword. We would have done the same," Zabuza admitted to Naruto. "You would just give it to Haku? Why?" Mei asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto shrugged. Why not? It means more to Kiri than it does to me, and I don't use it. Besides, I like Haku-chan here. So why not?" he replied as he ruffled Haku's hair like he would on Narumi. "I see. That's quite kind of you, Naruto-kun," Mei responded, after a few seconds of observing Naruto wordlessly. "Well, since you have that sword now, it would be best if you learned how to wield it properly. Head over to Mangetsu, and ask him to train you. Tell him it's an order." Mei told Haku, who nodded and left the tent. If that's all, may I be excused? Naruto asked Mei. Oh. Do you not like being in my presence? And here I was, thinking we were getting along so well. Mei growled out the last two words in a seductive way with a smile on her face. No, it's not that. I was just gonna work on training with Kimimaro and Suigetsu, Naruto stammered out. I see. Have fun with the boys then, Naruto-kun, Mei said as she winked at him. Naruto left the tent quickly, with a blush on his face. Kimimaro followed suit with his regular blank face, while Suigetsu walked out sniggering. You do that to him every time, and the reaction is always entertaining. Zabuza commented with a grin on his face. Mei chuckled. He's an interesting one. He seems to be easygoing, but then is capable of mass murder without remorse. Then the next moment, he just helps people for nothing in return. I still can't believe the new Abari was with him the whole time. And I can't believe he just gave it back to us for free, Zabuza said in response. He's quite the mystery. He even gave us the majority of our funds without expecting to be part of our cause. He's been with for over a month now, and we still don't even know what he is truly capable of. He appears to be open with his feelings, but I can't get a read into what he's really feeling or thinking. What's he really up to? What makes him tick? Mei wondered out loud. The only time he's not playing his mysterious game is when you flirt with him. Maybe he has feelings for you? Zabuza suggested. You would think so, but I don't think that's what's going on. At first, I thought so as well, and that explained his behavior, doing outlandish things to get my attention. But I realized he's just dancing to his own rhythm. He doesn't even consider his high-risk operations to be special. It's like that's just normal for him. It's clear he's capable of a lot more, as unbelievable as that is. The little he's shown was enough to shift the balance of the civil war in our favor. Mei responded. Just what are you truly capable of? What is your game? Who exactly are you? Mei whispered to herself. At the rebel base. Geez, Naruto-sama, what are you, 12? You suck at talking to girls, Suigetsu teased. Why don't you ken it, Raindrop? Don't make me kick your ass. Naruto growled out. It does seem like Mei-sama makes you quite uncomfortable. Are you perhaps scared of her? Kimimaro asked seriously, not quite getting what made Naruto act so strangely around Mei. Nah, he just squirms like that, 'cause he's trying his hardest to not let his little man salute Mei-sama. Suigetsu snickered. His little man? Do you have a son, Naruto-sama? Kimimaro asked, oblivious to the innuendo. Alright, that's enough. It seems free time just makes you guys talk about nonsense. We'll spar to make productive use of our time. Both of you, come at me. Maybe if you guys spent less time yapping, and more time training, you'd actually be able to touch me this time, Naruto said as he grinned. Suigetsu scowled. I'm gonna cut you in half this time. Come on, Kimimaro. Kimimaro simply nodded nonchalantly as he ripped a sharpened bone out of his shoulder. We shall try out best to land a hit on you, Naruto-sama. Naruto yawned. Well? I'm waiting. He gave them a cheeky smirk. In Training Ground 7, a resting day for Kakashi. Eh? Really? Kakashi-sensei and Dengo-ne? Narumi questioned as she tilted her head to one side. Shh, not so loudly. What if someone hears, Izumi said as she looked around to make sure no one was watching. Well. That's an interesting pair. Right, Hinata-chan? Narumi asked Hinata. I think they'd be cute. Hinata replied. Right? They're perfect for each other. Both are crazy enough to be with each other, Izumi exclaimed in excitement. Sasuke began to pale and shiver as he imagined the two. What? No. What if Kakashi brings that insane lady to training? Or what if that lazy bum puts her in charge of training? He began to chew on his nails nervously. Oh, stop it, Sasuke-kun. You're being overdramatic. Anko-chan is a little crazy, but she's actually quite sweet. And have more respect for Kakashi, will you? He's one of our strongest ninja. Izumi admonished Sasuke. You just don't know, Izumi-ne-san. The things she can do. Her and her snakes. Sasuke shivered. Narumi ignored her dramatic friend. So what should we do? How can we help? Izumi smiled. I knew I could count on you, Narumi-chan. Just convince Kakashi to stop reading that book of his, and to go on a date with a real woman. And try to subtly suggest Anko. We'll try, but Narumi pinched a Sasuke who's shaking his head and crossing his arms in an X to show he wouldn't be a part of this. Like I said, we, as in all of us, And yes, that includes you too, Sasuke, we'll try. But it's gonna be hard to get his nose out of that disgusting book. Oh, you mean Icha? It's actually not so bad. They have pretty good plots usually. It's just a problem when you start to prefer the books over real people. Izumi explained. No. Not you too, Narumi gasped. You should give it another go. Maybe it's not so bad? Hinata shyly suggested. No. Don't tell me they got you too. Narumi screamed as she began to backpedal with a deer in the headlight look, before she ran away. Izumi and Hinata looked at each other before they turned to look at a Narumi who had her hands over her ears, running around screaming some nonsense about some conspiracy involving corrupting the minds of innocent girls, and asking her Ni-chan to come and save her. Do you know what that's all about, Hinata-chan? Izumi asked Hinata, who just shook her head. At the Mizukage Tower. Sir, our new informants have brought us news that they have a mercenary in their ranks who may be an Uzumaki survivor. He seems to be responsible for the changes in the rebels' method of operation. An officer reported to Yagura. Those damn Uzumaki. They're basically bloodline freaks as well. Kill any Uzumaki we might find, Yagura shouted out as he slammed a fist on the table. But sir, how about their knowledge of seals? Wouldn't it be better if we're able to utilize their knowledge? Some powers are better off disappearing so no one can misuse them. Kill them all, Yagura said, putting his foot down on the matter. This mercenary seems to be responsible for stealing quite a bit of intel, causing our raids to turn into opportunities for ambushes our men for them. They also seem to have found a weak spot in our chain of command who communicates with the mercenary, telling them places they can exploit and raid. Another officer informed the meeting. Using our intel to turn our attacks against us, Yagura whispered to himself, as he thought. We'll use this strategy against them then, Yagura whispered to himself. One of our prisoners exposed where their HQ is. The Mizukage announced as he took a look around the room to see if anyone reacted to the news. We'll build up our forces in Outpost 12C, and stockpile weapons and equipment here. We'll clear out the nearby outposts to send their numbers to Outpost 12C. At least openly. We'll send mostly our weakest and newest recruits here to show off their numbers, while we secretly send 1,000 of our most elite to ambush their base when they move out to attack the supposedly empty outposts near Outpost 12C, and hopefully capture that bitch, May. As such, we'll be sending these men to Outpost 5A instead, near where their HQ is. Yagura explained. Feed them false information to lay a trap? Munyashi Jinpachi, the only legendary swordsman of the mist who sided with the loyalists, and right-hand man of Yagura, guessed. Yagura smiled a cruel smile. Indeed. Now everyone, you're dismissed. Except for you, Nezu. I have something to discuss with you. All of the officers, except for Nezu and Jinpachi, left. What is it, Mizukage-sama? The officer named Nezu asked. The actual outpost closest to their base is Outpost 9B. Yagura quietly told Nezu. I see. But why would you lie to the other officers? He questioned. I believe we have an informant in our midst. Make sure you keep this information to yourself. I know I can trust you, so I'm going to put you in charge of the raid. Jinpachi will send you 1,000 men to Outpost 9B, is that understood? Nezu nodded. Hi, Mizukage-sama. I won't let you down. Good. I know you won't. Now go. And make sure you don't tell anyone about this conversation. Once Nezu left the room, Jinpachi closed the door and approached Yagura. Should I send the 1,000 elites to Outpost 9B? Yagura shook his head. Send the deserters, weaklings, and informant suspects. Jinpachi raised an eyebrow. You suspect Nezu? Yagura once again shook his head. No. I suspect everyone except you. That's why I'm going to secretly tell each of them a different outpost will be the real base of operations. Whichever place gets hit, I'll know the officer in charge of that place will be the informant. That's why I'll be sending disposable units there. Jinpachi smiled. Clever. And you'll promptly execute the informant once they're exposed? Yagura smiled back. Not right away. We'll blame the leak of information on that apparent Uzumaki mercenary. We'll use the informant to leak false information to the rebels, and set a proper trap. More of Jinpachi's sharp teeth exposed themselves as his smirk widened. I see. Quite a devious plan, Mizukage-sama. Once we cripple their HQ and capture their slut of a leader, we'll use her to force them to coalesce into one force, so we can wipe them out once and for all, Yagura declared. In the rebel HQ. Mei-sama, We have information from one of our informants in the Mizukage's inner circle. Naruto informed Mei. That's good. Let's hear it. Mei motioned for Naruto to continue. Apparently, Yagura plans to make a big show of gathering his forces in the outpost near the Smoky Islands, by emptying the other outposts nearby. However, that's a diversion. They're hoping we go and raid these empty outposts, so they can hit our base while our forces are away. Naruto told Mei. Crafty. Good thing we managed to sneak in our informant into his council. Mei commented. He says the ambush force will be stationed in the outpost near Turtle Rock. If we can secretly plant bombs and collapse the outpost on their heads as they sleep, he says we'll be able to kill 1,000 of their elite forces. I see. We'll have to play along then. We'll make sure our ships are seen heading to the Smoky Islands by the Loyalist forces, but they'll mostly be empty ships. Meanwhile, you can take your team on a demolition mission to the outpost in Turtle Rock. Mei ordered. Naruto smiled. Say less, Mei-sama. He saluted her and left to get his team. On Turtle Rock, at night. Are you sure, Nezu-sama? I could do the inspections for tonight. No. This might be one of the last times we can look over the place before we attack. I'll do the inspections personally. Nezu told the officer speaking to him. Nezu then went off to inspect his men, and the overall security and status of the outpost. He sure works hard, eh? An officer told his fellow officer. That's why we follow him. He doesn't order us to do anything he won't do himself. Meanwhile, Nezu went around the outpost checking on all his men. Are all of our men accounted for? Nezu asked one squad leader. Hi, Nezu-sama. All the men are inside for the night. Most of our sentries will be watching the seas for rebel ships. We'll have a couple men stationed outside. Good. That way, everyone can sleep soundly, knowing they'll be safe. Get some rest too. We have a big day coming for us, Nezu commanded the man, who saluted him and went inside the sleeping quarters. Outside the outpost. 4 sentries slumped over at the same time, dead. Naruto spread his senses around, to check if there were any others that were outside. That's all of them. Good work, team. Damn, I'm never going to be able to eat another barbecued rib ever again, Suigetsu said as he scrunched his nose in disgust, watching Kimimaro pull a sharp rib out of a dead sentry's skull. Kimimaro ignored him. You were right, Haku-san. There is less blood if you stab them with a thinner bone. See, Suigetsu? You owe me. Stabbing beats slashing, Haku said smugly to Suigetsu, as she pulled her new blade out of a man's eye sockets. Yeah, whatever. You just don't know that satisfying feeling of splitting someone open like a ripe watermelon, since you got a weak-ass knitting needle as a sword, Suigetsu spat back. Why don't you leave the fighting to me and Bone Boy here, and go knit me a scarf? A vein began to show on Haku's forehead. Do you need me to freeze you again to remind you that I can beat you anytime I want? Alright you two, that's enough. Our informant should be here soon. Act professional for 5 minutes, will you? Naruto chastised the 2 teens. A dark figure came outside, appearing to inspect the security outside. He didn't see the bodies of the dead guards, because Naruto disposed of them. The informant slipped a small piece of paper into a bush, and headed elsewhere. A few minutes later, Naruto came out of hiding and picked it up. Good. Thank you for the information, Naruto whispered to himself. Come on team, follow me. Naruto ordered. Haku, Kimimaro, and Suigetsu followed Naruto, and began to stealthily plant Naruto's powerful explosive tags on key structurally important parts of the outpost and the barracks that was connected, all while avoiding the security details due to the informant's information. Once all of the explosive tags were planted, they got back to their boat. They rowed a safe distance away from the outpost, before Naruto formed the hand seal necessary for detonation. Kai. Buam. The large stone outpost exploded and collapsed on itself, killing the men inside, either from the explosion, or the massive rocks that fell as debris. And that, my dear friends, is how you destroy a building. Naruto told his crew, as he took a bow. Too bad we couldn't loot the place this time. Suigetsu commented. Or get much action. The mission was a success. We've done as Mei-sama ordered, Kimimaro said stoically. As they rode away, Naruto looked back at the smoke rising. He couldn't help but think this mission was way too easy. Were the elites of Kiri this lax in security? He brushed aside his concerns. Maybe I'm just getting too good at doing these missions. Everything seems too easy. A little boring, but oh well. He thought to himself. At the Mizukage Tower, a few days later. Mizukage-sama. He's here. A shinobi informed Yagura. Good. Send him in. A nervous-looking Nezu entered. Sir, I'm sorry. If only I had been more thorough with my security. Yagura gave him a benevolent smile. Don't worry, I don't blame you. My sources have already told me that the Uzumaki mercenaries somehow stole the information. We'll need to deal with him soon, but for now, I'm just glad you returned safely. Thank you, Mizukage-sama. I'll make that bloodline sympathizer bastard pay. Nezu growled out angrily. I'm sure you will. Yagura told Nezu as he patted him on the shoulder. While you're here, there's something I'll need your help with. Come follow me. Nezu was confused, but nodded and followed the Mizukage. Yagura led him down to the lower levels of the Mizukage tower, while engaging with Nezu in friendly small talk. Good to hear your family is doing all right. I'm glad to hear your daughter is recovering from her illness. Yagura told Nezu as they approached the dungeons. I need your help with some investigation we're working on, so I need you to wait here. Yagura pulled out a chair for Nezu in the interrogation room. Nezu sat down, a little confused as he was no interrogation specialist, but he was still compliant. Of course, Mizukage-sama. Jinpachi. Go bring us our guest, will you? Yagura ordered Jinpachi, who had been waiting in the room for them. Of course. Should I bring out the woman first? He asked. Yes. Now go. Nezu sat waiting, his thoughts all over the place, trying to figure out what was going on. He glanced over at Yagura, but his peaceful, nonchalant demeanor made it hard for him to guess what was going on in the Mizukage's head. Yagura soon stood up with a smile on his face. Ah, here comes our guest. Please, have a seat. Nezu turned around to face the door to see who the guest was. His jaw dropped, and his face paled when he saw who it was. What was his wife doing here? His gagged wife was similarly spooked, and was trembling in Jinpachi's rough grip, as he led her to her seat. He roughly sat her down. Now Jinpachi. No need to be so rough with our guest. Yagura chastised Jinpachi in a sarcastic tone. What is the meaning of this, Mizukage-sama? Why is my wife here? Nezu shouted out. Now. No need to shout. We're all inside, Yagura said in a calm tone. Let's also not forget who we're speaking to, Nezu-san. Yagura's calm gaze intensified as his tone grew more threatening. Nezu sat back down, hoping to avoid the Mizukage's wrath. Of course, Mizukage-sama. My apologies. I let my confusion get the better of me. The Mizukage nodded understandingly, as he sat down next to Nezu's terrified wife, on the other side of the table of Nezu. Jinpachi positioned himself behind Nezu's wife. Now. How long have you been passing information to the rebels? Yagura asked Nezu suddenly, his tone changing from a friendly one into an ominous one in an instant. It caught Nezu off guard. What? Please, Nezu. Don't make me repeat myself. You know how angry it makes me when I have to repeat myself. Yagura growled out as his tone changed back and forth between friendly and threatening, making him sound unhinged, but dangerous. Yes, of course, Mizukage-sama. I was just confused. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Nezu stammered out. Yagura nodded understandingly, and held out his hand to Jinpachi. The swordsman put a hammer and a 15 cm nail in Yagura's hand. Jinpachi. Hold her hands together. Yagura ordered calmly. Jinpachi roughly grabbed the poor woman's hands, and forced them onto the table, one on top of another. Nezu's wife looked at Nezu with frightened and widened eyes, her teary eyes begging him to help her. Yagura positioned the nail on top of her hands, and held the hammer above it. How long have you been a spy? He asked once again. Please. I'm not a spy. Nezu pleaded his innocence. Yagura nodded wordlessly, before he smashed the nail through the poor woman's hands, and into the table. Nezu's wife screamed through her gag, and writhed in pain, as tears dripped down her eyes, mirroring the blood dripping down the nail through her hands. Mizuko, Nezu yelled out in shock. Mizukage-sama. Please. I swear, I'm not an informant. I don't know anything. Yagura sat back down, and stroked Nezu's wife's wet cheeks, as she cried in terror and pain. Jinpachi, please bring our other guest, will you? Yagura asked Jinpachi, who nodded and left to fetch the other guest. Nezu began to fear who his other guest might be. A couple seconds later, Jinpachi came in with Nezu's daughter, walking in with her hand in his hand. To-san? What's going on? The 6-year-old brunette asked before seeing her trembling mother. Ka-chan. What's going on? She yelled as she ran over to her mother. Tears began to drip down his eyes. Not his daughter. He and Mizuko had 2 miscarriages previously, and she was finally born after a difficult pregnancy and childbirth. She had been born weak, and had been sick for years, only recently getting better. Nezu could still see the brilliant smile on her face when she was first allowed to go outside to play. She was the apple of his eye. The sun in his sky. Yagura had Nezu's daughter sit in his lap. He began to stroke her hair. Jinpachi, please bring us a map. When Jinpachi brought the map and spread it out on the table, Yagura began the questioning again. So how long have you been handing over information to the rebels? Was it when the Uzumaki arrived? Nezu was unable to answer, as tears flowed down his face. He was torn between his duty to his family, and his duty to the cause. I see, Yagura said when Nezu didn't reply. Jinpachi? Jinpachi put a scalpel in Yagura's hands, and took Nezu's daughter, making her stand in front of him, with his hands on her shoulders. Yagura made a shallow incision on Mizuko's finger, before he began to flay the skin off of her little finger. Nezu's wife screamed once again, and bucked about, but her hands were nailed to the table. She trembled in pain, as she sweat all over her body. Yagura peeled the skin of her little finger down to the second segment. Mizuko cried painfully, as her whole body shook. Nezu's daughter had her eyes wide open as she saw the whole scene. Ka-chan. To-san, what are they doing to Ka-chan? Make them stop, she cried out as she tried to help her mom, but Jinpachi held her in place firmly. I already know you're a spy. The outpost I sent you on? It was a fake mission. I just used it to find out who the spies were. I told each officer that I was secretly sending them to a different outpost, and that their mission was the real one. You know whose outpost was the only one hit? If you already knew, then why do all this? Just kill me. Just please, spare my family, Nezu sobbed out. Kill you? Oh no no no. You're much too valuable to kill, Yagura said in a sing-song voice. As for why I would do this? It was a demonstration. To let you know I mean business. The real information I want to know is where their HQ is. Nezu looked over the map. But I don't know where their HQ is, he whispered out. Then you better figure out fast. Your wife was just an example, Yagura threatened, as he turned his gaze to Nezu's daughter. No. Please. I'll tell you everything I know. Just please, leave my daughter alone. Nezu pleaded. In that case, why don't you take them fingers of yours, and point out where their HQ is? Yagura told Nezu. Nezu couldn't take it anymore. With trembling hands, he slowly began to hover over the map. His index finger finally landed on a large, distant island. The gates of Uzushio. Yagura quietly whispered to himself. You clever bitch. Jinpachi. Bring a doctor and have them reattach Mizuko's skin back to her finger, and treat her hands. Then escort her and her daughter into their cell. Put Nezu in a cell in a separate wing. Jinpachi nodded, and left with the traumatized girl. Should your information turn out to be false, or if you try anything behind my back, I'll cut off your daughter Akiko's eyelids, nose, lips, ears, and limbs. But I'll make sure she stays alive. Then, I'll lock her up in a separate cell facing the cell your wife will be in. She will want to hold your daughter in her arms again, but she'll never get to touch her again, instead only able to watch her waste away in these dungeons, never able to see the sun again. Am I clear? Yagura threatened Nezu. Nezu nodded as he sobbed. Good. Now continue to pretend everything is fine to the rebels. If you so much as cry in public, I'll send you your daughter's eyelids. Yagura told Nezu before he left. Nezu was now left alone in the bloody interrogation room. He crumpled to the floor, and began to weep. I'm sorry Mizuko. I'm sorry Akiko. I'm sorry Mei-sama, Nezu sobbed out on the cold floors of the room. With Yagura. Yagura sat in his chair, as he planned in private. He couldn't let this leak out. If I lead the expedition myself, I won't need to tell anyone anything, other than the general direction they need to sail. After I destroy a few of their hideouts that are near Kiri, that Nezu will point out to me, those pesky rebels will begin to be hypersensitive of my ship and my sail. Yagura thought to himself. Once they lose a couple bases, they'll try to prevent the next attack. I'll use their information network against them. I'll pretend to sail towards a base, and have my ship anchor nearby their base. If I'm nearby personally, Mei will have to lead her troops personally to defeat me. Yagura looked at a detailed map of some islands near the gates of Uzushio, where the rebel HQ was. I'll make sure I pay them back for all of their ambushes, with one of my own. It'll be sweet payback. Yagura thought as he began to smile a mad smile. He would make sure a decisive blow was dealt soon. Chapter 33, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 4. A few days later, at a rebel base. This is so cruel. How could they do this? They weren't even combatants, Haku said in shock, as she laid down the remains of a woman tightly holding her dead child in her arms. This is what happens when you're trying to remove the world of a bloodline. You make sure that you kill everyone who might one day pass down the trait. Zabuza told Haku as he gazed at the sight of destruction. Hundreds of bodies littered the path from the camp to the emergency bunker, many of them civilians. No signs of a fight here, other than the massive destruction of the base. They all died at the same time, unable to fight back. Naruto commented as he looked over the destroyed rebel base. How is this possible? Haku questioned out loud. A strong jutsu. One strong enough to kill everyone at once. Mangetsu responded, without any of the humor that was usually present in his tone. But who's strong enough to do something like this? Suigetsu asked his brother. Yagura. Mei responded instead, clenching her fists tightly as she tried to control her rage. This is most likely his work. She looked around the site, taking in the sight of each dead body that was haphazardly thrown all over the place. Each one was a son, a daughter, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, a lover to someone. They all had their own hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams of a better future. They had pinned their hopes on Mei, believing that she would lead them there. They would never see that future realized, all of that blotted out in a single moment of terror. That felt like 1,000 daggers stabbed Mei in the heart. Every time some of her already few rebel shinobi died, it felt like she sent them to their deaths. With the indiscriminate deaths she saw here, she felt like a failure. Mei-sama. We found some survivors in the bunker. Ao informed Mei, as he helped an injured survivor head over to Mei. She says she can tell us what happened. Mei ordered Haku to treat the survivor and get her some water. As Haku cleaned and wrapped bandages around the kunoichi's wound, Mei began to question her. What happened here? Did you see what happened? The kunoichi nodded. It was just another night for everyone. We were cleaning up and getting ready to sleep for the night. I was ordered to set out the traps for fish for tomorrow's meal, so I was at the beach. I finished setting the traps, and was about to head back to camp, when I saw a ship heading this way. At first I couldn't see the ship well because it was dark and the ship was far away, but I soon saw the blue and red sails with the turtle insignia. It was Yagura's flagship. The injured kunoichi recounted before she winced when Haku tightened the bandages around her leg. Please, continue. What happened next? Mei asked. When I saw it was Yagura's ship, I immediately ran to the camp and told them Yagura was coming here. At first they didn't believe me, but a few other sentries came and told the others the same thing. The leader of the camp immediately tried to direct us into the bunker. I was at the door of the bunker, helping people get in, when suddenly, she began to trail off as her eyes widened in terror as she remembered what happened. She began to hyperventilate as she was seized by the trauma once again. Suigetsu, throw some water on her face. Haku, get her some sake, immediately. Mei quickly ordered. The woman came back to her senses when Suigetsu splashed her face with a weak water jutsu, and calmed her nerves with the sake that Haku brought for her. I know it's difficult, but please, we need to know what happened. Mei gently pleaded. The kunoichi wiped a few tears away as she tried to calm herself down. I was guiding people into the bunker, when I felt a massive amount of chakra. I'm not a sensor or anything, so when I felt the chakra, I knew something big was happening. I looked over to see what was going on, and saw a massive black ball of chakra flying towards the base. Baiju Dama. Mei and Ao whispered to themselves. When the ball of chakra hit the base, it obliterated everything. It killed everyone who wasn't already inside the bunker. Including Asahi. My boyfriend. She began to sob again. Mei sat beside the crying young woman, and rubbed her back to comfort her. I was thrown back into the bunker by the force of the explosion. It hurt my leg, but I guess that's what saved my life. The kunoichi managed to say as she tried her best to stop crying. Shh. That's enough. Thank you for telling us. Mei told the young woman as she hugged her and patted her back. The kunoichi sank into the embrace and began to cry into Mei's chest, finally releasing her tears unconstrained, as the shock wore off and the full force of the situation hit her. Let's bury everyone quickly and get out of here. No point lingering here. Ao suggested. This war was tough on everyone. He had seen too much brutality and death in this civil war. He could see the horrors of the war were hitting the younger shinobi amongst them harder. Help this poor girl find the remains of her boyfriend. It'll help her have some sort of closure. Mei ordered Ao, who nodded. The weeping woman was led away by Ao and some of the other sympathetic shinobi that were around. So it seems the Mizukage is finally stepping out into the stage now. Naruto commented. Mei clenched her fists tightly. I swear I'll make that bastard pay for everything he's done. All the families he's destroyed. All the clans that were driven to near extinction. All of the deaths. I'll make him feel every bit of the pain he forced onto others. We'll need to come up with a contingency plan to deal with this Mei-sama. Zabuza proposed. Why didn't Nezu let us know this was coming? Mangetsu asked. Do you think? Maybe he's been compromised? Naruto shook his head. He's been sending us information, even just yesterday. There was no way he could have known this was going to happen. The Mizukage came out himself, so there was no way for Nezu to know where he was going. It's just unfortunate. Mei whipped her head around to face Naruto. This is more than just unfortunate. This is unacceptable. We can't let this happen ever again. What can we do to prevent this? Mangetsu asked. It's not like we could teleport to different places and help. Besides, what can we do against a fucking Baiju Dama? Send out our spies, sentries, scouts, sensors. Anyone. We need to keep an eye on Yagura's movements. We need to kill him before this can happen again. Mei growled out. The moment his ship is seen at a distance we can reach in time, I'll lead our men myself. He's been allowed to hide in his shell for too long. Now that he's stuck his head out, it's time for us to drop the axe. The rebels soon finished burying the dead, and boarded their ship. The voyage back was somber, with a melancholy atmosphere hanging over everyone. The loss of the base hit Mei the hardest, in large part due to her responsibility as the leader of the rebellion, but also due to the trauma from her past. The Narumi clan was one of the first to be hit when the purge started. She could still see the bodies strewn all over their clan compound, as she was muffled and dragged out by a concerned retainer of the clan, who hid her in a barrel and threw her in a river before he himself was killed. Years later, when she unified the separate rebel factions into one and became the leader, she found a few Narumi survivors. Unfortunately, she was the only one who survived from her family. The traumatized children and the destruction around them made Mei see her younger self in each of them. She wanted nothing more than to give them a future where they could live a better life than she did. The last few weeks had given her hope, but today was a huge blow for the rebels. It reminded them how precarious their situation was. The little victories she had won against the loyalists were just that, little victories. As long as Yagura lived, nothing would change. It reminded Mei what needed to be done. These little hit-and-run raids were nothing more than attempts to draw out Yagura, and he was finally out now. However, she wasn't quite sure she liked it now that he was out himself. Naruto watched Mei as she attempted to look unfazed on the outside, even giving him a few flirtatious smiles, but they were hollow. She was really beating herself up inside. She blamed herself for not being to prevent these deaths. For not being a better leader. Naruto turned his mind to his own thoughts. Here was the first Jinchuuriki cage of a village. An insane, twisted, and absolutely cruel bastard who tore apart his own village. Great. Give a Jinchuuriki a position of power for once, and what does he do? Becomes a mass-murdering psychopath who proceeds to commit genocide amongst his own village. Naruto thought to himself. He was worried this would be bad for Narumi, who also wanted to become a cage. If you get in the way of her dreams. His mind was consumed with violent thoughts for the rest of the journey back. With Team 7. Man, C-rank missions are boring. When can we get another A-rank mission? Narumi complained to Kakashi, as they traveled to Suna after delivering messages to other neighboring villages. If you don't like C ranks, we can always do D ranks. Kakashi reminded her from behind his book. Oh, come on. We proved that we could take on an A rank. Give us at least a B rank. Narumi begged. You were stabbed in the stomach, Narumi. You guys could have all died. Is that what you want? You'd be happy if one of your teammates die, as long as you get to do cool missions? Kakashi snapped back. That shut Narumi up. Well, not if you put it like that. You guys were all extremely lucky. If any of the many lucky factors that were on your side went slightly differently, there could possibly not be a Team 7 right now. Don't let a success or two get to your heads and make you arrogant. Stronger ninja have died from arrogance, too many times. Kakashi lectured. That put a damper on the team's mood. Oh, and by the way, I'd appreciate it if you didn't go around talking about that mission. Others don't need to know and get the wrong idea. Kakashi told the team as he remembered his mission from the Sandaime. Fine. But it sucks that we can't tell our friends about our cool missions. Narumi grumbled. Actually, Let's make that don't tell anyone, not just your friends. Kakashi added. Not even my Ka-san? Sasuke asked. Or my Ado-sama? Hinata also wondered. How about my Ni-chan? Narumi asked. Kakashi tried his hardest not to show any reaction to the last name. They might catch on if he gave them any hints. Let's not tell them for now. Don't want them to be unnecessarily concerned. Maybe they'll prevent you guys from going on cool missions in the future because they're worried. Kakashi explained. Hopefully this makes them keep their mouths shut. Kakashi hoped as he tried to manipulate the Jinan. Oh man. Definitely can't tell Ni-chan then, Narumi shouted out. You guys better not tell your parents either. So, you're saying if we keep it a secret, we might be able to go on higher rank missions? Sasuke asked. Of course. Shinobi are expected to be able to keep secrets after all. If you prove yourselves as being trustworthy, you might be given better missions. Kakashi replied. Of course, that was mostly a lie. Sure, Shinobi were expected to keep secrets, but that had nothing to do with missions you were assigned as Jinan. He just needed to keep the secret from Naruto, for the sake of peace. The team traveled in silence after that for a while, before Narumi spoke up. Kakashi-sensei? She asked. The lazy Anbu captain turned babysitter/sensei replied. I was wondering, have you ever dated anyone before? Narumi asked. Kakashi almost tripped over a rock from the unexpected question. What? No. Not really. He replied when he regained his composure. Why? You want to get dating tips from me? Narumi rolled her eyes. VSHH. Hardly. I bet all of your tips will be perverted, seeing how your nose is buried in that book all day. I don't even know how you manage to walk without bumping into things. You might just see me as some pervert who can't bear to part from his precious books for even a second, but underneath that disguise, is a shinobi dedicated to training. You see, this is in fact, a training exercise for me. While my eyes are occupied by this book, I'm actually training my other senses to be able to navigate, even without my eyes. That way, I won't ever be caught off guard. Kakashi replied. The three Jinan stopped walking and glared at him. Sensing the strange mood, Kakashi peered over his book. What? That was quite an elaborate excuse. Sasuke accused as he rolled his eyes at what he saw as nonsense. Yeah, if elaborate means a bunch of lies and nonsense. Narumi added. Come on Hinata, let's go. If we spend any more time around this pervert than we need to, his perversion might spread. Narumi protectively pulled Hinata away from Kakashi who stood there gaping under his mask. The three Jinan left Kakashi standing there as they picked up their pace to move away from him. Damn. I thought they'd believe that one. It worked on Guy, Kakashi mumbled to himself before chuckling as he remembered how Guy bought a book of his own started copying him, much to the chagrin of his female Jinan student. With Yagura. Ah, Nezu. Good to see you. Yagura greeted Nezu with a smile. Nezu forced himself to smile as well, hoping to placate the unpredictably cruel leader, even though it made him want to throw up inside. You called for me, Mizukage-sama? Nezu asked. Yes. Please. Have a seat. Yagura motioned to a chair in front of his desk, which Nezu promptly seated himself in. I want you to tell your friends at the Rebel HQ that I'm changing my tactics. I'm specifically going to go after civilians now, to destroy their bloodline completely, and to kill the rebels' morale. As such, I'll be mostly targeting the bases with the larger civilian populations. In fact, I've already started. Yagura informed Nezu. Nezu was horrified to hear that he had already begun going out personally to kill civilians. But this is a ruse? Nezu asked, his habit of gathering intel kicking in subconsciously. Yagura responded with a smile. He'd indulge Nezu. If the man acted against him, he'd just go play surgeon on his family for a while. No. I actually mean it. I want them to know that all of the civilian deaths are on Mei's hands. I want them to lose trust in her ability to lead them and to keep them safe. Once they lose trust in her, the figure holding the rebellion unified, they'll break off into smaller factions, which will be easier to mop up. Maybe I'll be lucky and even break that bitch's spirit. Nezu nodded contemplatively. Oh, by the way, I don't have to remind you to keep that part to yourself, right? Just tell the rebels what I told you to tell them, or else I might find myself with a new leather cover for my favorite book. And did I mention, your wife and daughter have such nice skin? Please ask them for their secret the next time you visit them, will you? Yagura said in playful manner, though the threat lying underneath his whimsical tone was anything but. Nezu nodded, and left when Yagura dismissed him with a wave of the hand. As he headed out to relay Yagura's information to the rebels, he couldn't help but wonder what else Yagura was planning. How many people will lose their lives because I put the lives of my family before theirs? Nezu contemplated to himself. The demons of his choices haunted him every moment of his life now. Still, this was the choice he made. It was too late to look back now. Sorry Mei-sama. I wasn't strong enough. At Suna, in the Kazekage's office. Kazekage-sama, there are messengers at our gates from Konoha. Were we expecting them? The Kazekage's secretary asked him from the outside of his office. I see. I wasn't expecting them today, but I think I know why they're here. Send them up here within 30 minutes. Raza, the Yondaime Kazekage ordered. Once the secretary left to relay the message to the Suna shinobi who brought her the message, Raza's guest resumed his talks. Kukaku. So, the exams are just around the corner. The man commented. It would seem you're correct. However, I'm still not sure if this is the best idea. I need more assurance that things will turn out in our favor. Konoha is still the most powerful village. Raza remarked. You'll find that the tales of their strength is exaggerated, and not what it once was. They've lost too many of their powerhouses. Their strong front is merely that. A facade. There is much to gain for Suna if Konoha should be met with an unfortunate turn of events. The man facing Raza hissed. Even so, the risk is tremendous. I'll need more information before I can give you an answer. Now, I suggest you keep your presence here a secret, especially now that shinobi from Konoha are here. Raza suggested. Kukaku. Very well. I shall be back in due time. I hope you have your information, and your answer by then. The man then proceeded to vanish into the floor. That man. I don't know what he's up to. I know he doesn't have the best of Suna in his mind. What does he hope to gain? Raza quietly thought to himself. On the streets of Suna. Wow. Check this place out. I can't believe a place like this exists in the middle of a desert, Narumi exclaimed as she marveled at the unique village that was unlike anything she had seen. It was far more modest than Konoha was, but the fact that there was so much life and even plant life present at all in such an inhospitable place just made it look so much more mystical than what it actually was. Hey! What's so great about this place? It's just mostly brown. Sasuke commented as he looked around in confusion, trying to see what Narumi was so impressed with. While Konoha had numerous buildings built in various styles, materials, and painted with various colors, the buildings in Suna were mostly carved out of brown rock, or built with sandstone, giving the village a very uniform look. Now, let's remember we're guests here. And try to remember that Suna isn't known to be very kind, especially foreigners. Let's try to stay polite, alright? Kakashi reminded the Genin. The three Genin looked around, and saw that the villagers looked on them with wary and suspicious looks. Aren't we allied villages, Kakashi-sensei? Hinata asked, unsure if she felt the so-called friendship between the two villages from the Suna villagers. Let's just say, friendship doesn't always mean the same thing you might expect, especially between ninja villages. Something we were reminded from your trip to Taki. Kakashi replied. As the team were escorted towards the Kazekage Tower, Narumi felt a huge surge of negative emotions nearby. She froze where she stood, and looked at the direction where she sensed a presence earlier. Something wrong, Narumi? Sasuke asked, seeing that his friend was falling behind, her attention on some empty alley. And no. Not really. I just thought I sensed something. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Narumi replied as she rejoined her team. She couldn't sense the presence anymore anyway, so she thought she was mistaken. As the team walked on, an eye of sand crumbled away in the alley, and a short figure further away clutched at his auburn hair near his forehead. Yes, mother. She does seem to be quite peculiar. Yes. I think so too. Her blood will be the same color as her hair. Maybe I'll keep some after I kill her. He muttered to himself. At the Rebel HQ. Mei-sama. We've got another one. Naruto informed Mei. Another base had been attacked by Yagura, and nearly everyone died. Mei felt her heart sink. She had sent out messengers to all of the bases to tell them to gather at the main rebel base for safety, but some of the ones further away got hit before the message got to them. I see. Mei replied simply, lacking the confidence that was usually in her voice. She felt like she had aged another 30 years overnight. The weight of the hundreds of souls that she failed on her shoulders weighed her down like a ton of bricks. Al looked over at Mei with concern in his eyes. He had heard screams and the faint sounds of sobbing coming from Mei's tent in the middle of the night. He didn't disturb her as he thought she could use the rest, but it was clear she got no rest last night, judging by her disheveled look, which her radiant natural beauty coupled with her makeup failed to completely mask. Even her sharp eyes and luscious hair looked a little duller today. It was clear that the war was taking a toll on her. Ao was worried the men would lose confidence in the cause, and in her, and abandon her if they found out how vulnerable she was. He was one of the only few people who could see she was hurting, as he had known her for years as her closest confidant, and she was doing a good job of keeping up a strong facade, but he wondered how long that would last. Something needed to change, and quickly too. "Mei-sama," Mangetsu yelled as he barged into the tent. She asked, a little lifelessly, as she looked up to see who called for her. "Ships. Sighted not too far from here. We believe it's Yagura," Mangetsu informed Mei. Her dull, lifeless eyes suddenly came to life, burning with fury. "Yagura?" she growled out as she rose from her seat. "Where?" "His ship was seen heading towards the Black Cliffs," Mangetsu replied. "Looks like Nezu's intel was correct. He's going after the camps with the larger civilian populations. Too bad they already evacuated from the island though," Naruto commented. "Gather the men. I want 1,000 men to follow me, and the rest will stay here under Ao. Ao, you're in command until we return. We're going turtle hunting," Mei commanded everyone as she prepared herself. Ao saw the fire return to Mei's eyes. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. Land a blow on Yagura, to make him feel the pain we felt. Maybe even get him. "Hi, Mei-sama. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll keep the people safe until you return," Ao assured Mei. He'd try to take any burden he could off of Mei's shoulders. "Naruto-kun. Get ready to use your technique. I want us to get to the Black Cliffs before he does," Mei told Naruto, who nodded. "On Yagura's ship. Are the men ready?" Yagura asked a trusted officer. "Hi. We've picked out 500 of the stealthiest and most powerful Suiten ninjutsu users and swordsmen in your whole army. They're ready to ambush the rebels and sweep them into the rocks below. We'll sail in our other ship to set ourselves in position for you to use your coral jutsu to pick off the survivors once they fall." "Excellent. And Jinpachi?" "He's hidden himself on a tall basalt column. He's ready to signal us or the ambush party when he spots the rebels," the officer reported. "Good. Make sure my flagship is stationed on the beach on the east. They need to travel on the route we chose, for our ambush to work," Yagura reminded the officer, who nodded and left to carry out his orders. "Soon, I'll finally able to stamp out this curse in Kiri called Kekkei Genkai, once and for all," Yagura whispered to himself, as he touched the scar on his eye that was throbbing. He'd finally be able to get his revenge on the people who doomed him to a life as a demon. He'd make them regret ever choosing him. On the western shores of the Black Cliffs, the rebels arrived on the island formed from volcanic activity, which formed the black basalt columns, and the other black igneous rocks which gave it its name. Yagura's ship. It's about 1 kilometer away from the eastern shore. They'll reach the shore within 30 minutes. One scout told Mei. "We need to get there before they do. Hurry, follow me," Mei shouted to her men, leading them towards the eastern shore. The 1,000 men with her traveled in a column around the southern edge of the island, as the geography of the island made it the best route to get to the eastern shores undetected, as fast as possible. The island had a circular wall of basalt columns around a flatter area in the interior, where the rebel camp was located previous to their evacuation. The plains area had wide openings on the east and west, which made for an uninterrupted view from both shores. The curved northern and southern walls of basalt formed a cliff face on both the northern and southern sides of the island, though the tiered structure formed paths on top of the lower cliffs that dropped straight into the sea around the island, between the cliff walls around the plains and sea. Other spires and columns of basalt dotted the island, irregularly sticking out higher, and provided plenty of nooks and crannies for people to hide. Mei wanted to plan an ambush for the beach landing, so she could crush the loyalists, which made traveling undetected another priority, in addition to haste. However, she was acting just as Yagura and his advisors had wanted her to. They had already landed 500 of their most elite shinobi on the island hours before, and had stationed them on top of the cliffs overlooking the southern route that Mei and her forces were traveling. They hid behind the many columns of basalt that were sticking out, and waited for Mei to cross the point of ambush. Yagura's flagship was merely a decoy. Jinpachi was hidden on top of a tall spire of basalt, where he could easily see Yagura's ship, the ambush group, and the path the rebel forces were traveling on, though the three were hidden from each other's view. He was there to facilitate movement by signaling the right group at the right time. Jinpachi looked through a spyglass watching the furious rebel leader leading her men through the pass. He smiled with his sharpened teeth flashing wickedly. Everything was going just as Yagura planned. In approximately 5 minutes, Mei would reach the ambush point, where the ambushing force would use their most powerful jutsu to kill, injure, and sweep the larger rebel forces off of the cliff, driving the rest of the stragglers off with an aggressive push onto the jagged rocks below where they would be dashed to pieces. Then Yagura would approach them on his smaller and faster ship, and use his ability to manipulate coral to pick off the survivors. Jinpachi took out a small hand mirror, and flashed the ambushing force 3 times, letting them know where the rebel forces were. The rebels are almost here. Mask your chakra, and be ready to use your most powerful Suten jutsu on my command. The leader of the ambushing forces commanded. Oblivious of the trap they were heading into, Mei led her forces from the front, with Zabuza and Mangetsu by her side. Naruto and his team were in the back, protecting the rear of the column. Due to the haste, and assumed advantage of arriving first, nobody was able to do a thorough scan of the island, to look for enemy forces. Jinpachi flashed the loyalist ambush commander with the mirror once, letting him know it was almost time. The leader of the 500 took a deep breath and calmed his nerves. If this ambush was successful, the civil war could effectively end today. Perhaps Kiri could finally know peace. He could hear the sound of thousands of footsteps approaching, and knew it was now time. He held up his hand and began to count down, as he quietly whispered the countdown under his breath. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, he shouted out to his men. The rebels were caught off guard at the sudden shout, and froze in their places. 500 men suddenly emerged from the sloping cliffs above them. Suten, Sui Shuha. Water style, water colliding wave. Suten, Bakushua Shuha. Water style, exploding water shockwave. Suten, Suryudan no Jutsu. Water style, water dragon bullet technique. Suten, Suikodan no Jutsu. Water style, water shark bullet technique. A truly massive deluge of water swept towards the stunned rebels, as dozens of sharks and dragons made of water shot out of the massive tsunami that headed their way, appearing to ride the wave. The dumbfounded rebels were trapped. On one side, were sloping cliffs that had the largest wave of water jutsu they had ever seen coming their way. The other side was a cliff, which dropped off to sharp, jagged rocks below. They could only go forward or backwards, but the clumped column formation the rebels were in meant that only a few dozen, or if they were very lucky, a couple hundred, could make it out. They didn't even have time to respond with a jutsu of their own, especially without friendly fire in this packed formation. Everything happened in a split second, but they knew they were doomed. Some of the hopeless rebels began to drop their weapons. They could see their lives flashing before their eyes. They gave up hope. Some of the others who hadn't completely given up were looking around for some sort of way to save themselves, but they had no luck finding any. Mei looked at the bombardment of water jutsu coming their way, and time seemed to stop. She didn't have jutsu in her arsenal to stop an attack of that scale. All of those years she had spent in harsh conditions, living a teetering existence at the edge of a blade, all of the losses and victories she had experienced with the men who followed her, all of the people she had lost along the way, everything she had endured for the sake of hope for a better future, this oncoming behemoth of a wave threatened to sweep it all away, making all of her sacrifices for nothing. A single tear rolled down her cheeks as she clenched her fists so hard that her nails began to cut into her palm and draw blood. She was furious at herself for leading her men into an ambush. She was furious Yagura would be victorious once again. She was furious that she would be unable to bring that barbaric, psychotic tyrant to justice. But most of all she was furious at this unfair world that she was born into, one that gave her nothing but hardships, and teased her with hope for a better future, hope for justice, only to snatch it away in the most heartbreaking way. She resented her parents for bringing her into this world, and resented the heavens above that had destined her for this life. This last defeat would be a tough one to swallow. It was so bitter. She knew even if she died here today, she would never find peace. One by one, the men began to accept their fates, and their arms hung limply at their sides, awaiting the rest they would finally get with their deaths. All hope seemed lost for the rebels as the giant wave was only around 20 meters away from their position. That was when Naruto jumped ahead in front of the giant wave, along with 2 shadow clones he had formed without any hand seals. Fuck it, if I don't reveal my powers now, there won't be a rebellion to show it to, later. Sorry, Hokage-sama, but I'm going to have to reveal myself earlier than we had planned. The blonde Konoha native thought to himself as he and his clones went through dozens of hand seals faster than any other shinobi present had ever seen. Kaden, Guka Mekikyu. Fire release, great fire annihilation, Naruto bellowed out before spewing a massive wall of intense blue fire that almost rivaled the scale of the incoming combination of over 100 Suten jutsus. The rebels were left speechless by the largest fire jutsu any of them had ever seen in their lives. It didn't seem like it should be possible that one man could be capable of using a jutsu of this scale, but here they were, witnessing it. They couldn't believe their eyes. Still, as powerful as Naruto's jutsu was, it was still slightly smaller than the incoming wave. That, however, changed when the two clones next to him unleashed their jutsu. Futon, breath of the wind god. They both yelled out simultaneously, as they exhaled unbelievably powerful gusts of wind from their mouths. The hurricane-force winds tore up everything in their path, ripping rocks apart like they were wet tissue, until they reached Naruto's literal sea of blue flames. When his wind jutsu mixed with his fire jutsu, the already vast sea of fire tripled in size and intensity. The intense heat licked up the enormous combination of water jutsu, instantly evaporating it like a drop of water on red-hot iron. The rebels could barely keep their eyes open in the presence of the fire, as it felt like they were almost staring into the sun. Luckily, the direction of the fire jutsu, and the wind jutsu sent the heat towards the loyalists. The ambushing party was not as lucky as the rebels, to merely have some discomfort to their eyes from the bright fire, or complain that it was hot. The 100 or so shinobi that were closest to the front and cast the massive combination water attack, died painlessly, as the intense heat flash boiled all of the liquid in their bodies into steam instantly, causing them to explode before they were incinerated into dust. The ones who had it worst were the several dozen men that were close to the front, but behind the Suten users. The fire didn't reach them directly before Naruto cut off his jutsu after a couple seconds due to the massive chakra cost for the jutsu, which caused his clones to poof out of existence after using all the chakra they were given for the powerful S-ranked wind jutsu. Still, the intense heat quite literally melted the front of their bodies, though it was brief enough to not completely consume them. They felt excruciating agony before dropping dead in a charred mess. The scalding steam from the evaporated water burned the ambushing party severely, causing their exposed skin, which included their faces, to slough off partially, or leave painful blisters. Screams of pain erupted through the dense fog that now surrounded the ambushers. The rebels were almost unable to process what they had just seen. One moment, they were sure they were going to die in the face of the most powerful combination of water jutsu they had ever seen. Then, a literal sea of fire from the most powerful jutsu, regardless of element, that they had ever seen, licks up the entire small ocean of water that was heading their way. More incredibly, that jutsu was cast by one man. One man that many had simply thought to be a stealthy seal master swordsman. Unbelievable, Mangetsu whispered out. Zabuza just stood there with his mouth hanging open. He had always known Naruto was strong, ever since he faced him in Wave, and advocated his strength when others in the rebellion doubted Naruto's true strength. However, he had no idea this was what he was capable of. Naruto's team was also shocked to the core. Haku's eyes looked like they were about to pop out of her skull. Even the usually calm and stoic Kimimaro looked shaken. Suigetsu, however, was the most shocked. He remembered how relaxed he had been with a man who he imagined had the power of a god, even going so far as to make fun of him. Shit. What the fuck did I just see? Despite leaving every single person speechless, Naruto was not done yet. He bit his finger and drew some blood. Kushios no Jutsu. Summoning technique. A giant puff of smoke appeared, temporarily hiding Naruto from view. Everyone squinted their eyes, trying to see what the Uzumaki mercenary would do next. Slowly, some of the smoke receded, revealing Naruto standing on top of his summons. "Is that Zabuza?" gasped out in shock. Mangetsu narrowed his eyes. "That's the lost summons of the Nidaime. The giant clam." Gasps and murmurs broke out through the rebel army. Just who was this man? Mei watched the continuation of unbelievable and unpredictable actions from Naruto wordlessly. Being a clam, Naruto's summon was unable to communicate vocally. However, what it was incredible for, was genjutsu, unmatched amongst the other summons. It was able to overcome its lack of vocal abilities with its prowess in genjutsu. "It's been a long time, Naruto-sama. Why have you summoned me?" The giant clam communicated to Naruto telepathically through a genjutsu. "I'm going to try out something, but I'm not ready for the world to see it yet. I need you to create a genjutsu that covers this entire island. Hide the real me and my actions from view, but make them see mirages of me attacking them. For the rebels on my side, I want you to just make them see a thick mist covering what's going on. You can then burrow into the ground and hide yourself as well, Shinkiro-san." Naruto instructed the giant clam. As you wish, Naruto-sama. The giant clam communicated, before it began to spew out a mist from its siphon. Once the mirage of the giant clam took hold, it buried itself into the ground. Futon, Kairiki Muso. Boil release, unrivaled strength, Naruto whispered out, before he jumped into the air with a steam chakra-powered jump that sent him high into the air. In the air, he unsealed a tri-pronged kunai which hadn't been seen on a battlefield in decades. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kunai Shadow Clone Technique, Naruto whispered out as he threw his kunai, causing it to multiply into hundreds of kunai that landed all over the area the loyalist ambushers were located. The injured ambushers heard several thuds near their location, but couldn't see anything, due to Shinkiro's genjutsu. They struggled to get into a fighting stance, when they saw hundreds of blonde figures in a Kiri Onbu outfit and a hunter nin mask running at them with a sword. They tried to cut the apparent rebel Onbu down, but their swords and kunai just hit empty air. What's going on? One loyalist shinobi wondered out loud. Is this a genjutsu? Kai. Wait, why can I still see them? They tried to fight off the mirages of Naruto, but failed to do any real damage to the real Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto closed his eyes, and began to stretch out his senses. In just a couple of seconds, he located each of the locator beacons that his kunai were inscribed with, and the chakra of each enemy shinobi. He drew out his Kiri Onbu sword, and formed 10 shadow clones. This is my first time trying this, so I hope it works. He thought to himself. Time to recreate your legend, To-san, Naruto whispered under his breath. Hiraishin. Then, all the clones vanished in a yellow flash. It was absolute chaos for the loyalists. They were cut down by an enemy they couldn't see, while they were fighting illusions. Naruto released all of his resistance seals, and moved faster than he had done so in a long time. He and his clones flashed around the mist, delivering deadly strikes with his wind chakra-enhanced sword. The rebel forces couldn't see what was happening, but they could hear the sounds emerging from the mist. Screams of pain and terror rang out, as the sound of steel tearing through flesh was interrupted by the garbled sounds of blood gushing from slashed throats. The dull thuds of sundered flesh hitting the ground happened so frequently, it almost sounded like rain on a rooftop. Being unable to see what was going on left everything to the imagination of the rebels, who only had the terrifying and gruesome sounds to work with. The rebels watched in a hushed silence. Something was going on in that mist, and it was something terrifying, something their imagination went wild with, but reality was worse than what they could imagine. Naruto's deadly storm of blades came to an end in less than a minute, having sliced and diced each enemy into multiple chunks, when the last shinobi fell to the ground, dead, and cut into 5 pieces. He stood there panting after his handiwork was done. Even for a chakra monster like himself, using a powerful wind jutsu to travel, then using 3 chakra-intensive S-rank jutsus with shadow clones, then summoning a boss summon, then using the Hiraishin to kill hundreds of men, was not something that was easy on his chakra reserves. Thanks Shinkiро-san. You can go now. Naruto told the clam. Anytime you need me. Until next time then. The clam conveyed before it summoned itself back to its home. When the giant clam vanished, the genjutsu mist vanished as well. The heavy mist had been blown away by this time too, revealing Naruto to the rebels in all of his bloody glory. The rebels stood speechless as they looked on as Naruto emerged from the mist, absolutely covered in blood, wielding just a blade, panting as he stood upon literal heaps of the dismembered corpses of 500 shinobi that looked more like mangled meat rather than something that was once living, breathing people. Many of the rebels with weaker stomachs immediately threw up. Even with a life of fighting and death, this sight was simply too much. Soon, however, everyone got over the shock, and they realized what happened. They had been saved from certain death. After a brief silence where no one knew how to react, Mangetsu began to clap slowly. Zabuza soon followed his comrade, and within seconds, the whole army was clapping. Cheers and whistles began to ring out all over the place celebrating Naruto's victory. Despite all of the joy from being saved and being victorious, Mei stood there with an odd look on her face. She too was relieved at being saved, and happy they had won. However, she felt a chill creeping into her very bones at the implications. Here was a man who was capable of easily destroying an army by himself. Sure, he was with them now, but he wasn't a Kiri shinobi, and was only here on loan. There was no guarantee that they wouldn't face him as enemies one day. The fact that such a person existed was an existential threat for Kiri. She looked over the overjoyed rebels, and noticed no one saw the same problem she did. They assumed he was from Kiri as he hid his identity from everyone except a select few, and even they looked happy, not realizing the implications. She realized as long as he breathed in Konoha, Konoha would be untouchable, and far beyond their reach. Kiri would just be another second-rate village. Just what kind of monsters do they have? This is just one of their men? How about all of their other legends? The Sannin? The Ghost Squad? The Uchiha clan? The Hyuga clan? The Ino Shikacho trio? The Aburame? Kakashi of the Sharingan? The beautiful green beast of Konoha? The god of shinobi? She thought to herself. That clever bastard of a Hokage. This whole time, I thought he sent Naruto because he wanted to form an alliance with us once we won. When in reality, it was merely him flexing Konoha's muscle. Showing the whole world how strong Konoha is. Mei felt her knees shake in the face of such insurmountable odds. Even if she won the civil war, there were monsters like this out there, monsters who could destroy an entire village on their own. Suddenly, she felt very small. How could she ever protect her village against such enemies? Was she even fit to be a leader? No wonder he was so carefree. This was all just child's play to him. What a cruel joke. Mei realized. Zabuza noticed the troubled look on Mei's face, but just assumed it was from the disturbing chain of events that had occurred and brushed it off. In the midst of all of the celebrating, there was only one face that shared Mei's concern. Shit. That's not a human being anymore. That's a monster. A demon, Jinpachi whispered to himself with a pale face, before he slinked away to tell his master. Chapter 34, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 5. On Yagura's ship. Yagura-sama, Jinpachi shouted out in terror as he ran into the room that Yagura was in. Yagura turned from the window facing the basalt column that Jinpachi was supposed to signal him from, and towards the door where Jinpachi just entered. Jinpachi? What are you doing here? How about the ambush? Is it time for me to go and sweep up the survivors? Yagura questioned, before he took in Jinpachi's shaken look. What's with you? You look like hell. Yagura asked. Yagura-sama. There's something you should know. Jinpachi began. Yagura got an ominous feeling crawling up his spine. He had a feel he knew what this was about. The ambush didn't go as planned, huh? Yagura guessed. Jinpachi simply nodded. Did the rebels bring more than we expected? Did Ao discover the ambush? Did Mei pull out something big at the last second that killed some of our men? What is it? Spit it out, Yagura demanded. Jinpachi struggled to put his thoughts together. It was the Uzumaki mercenary. Him? What did he do? Did he create a barrier strong enough to hold back our jutsu or something? Yagura asked, wondering if the Uzumaki survivor knew his clan's powerful barrier techniques. Well, the ambush was set up perfectly, and all of our men did exactly as they were supposed to. Jinpachi began. Then? What's the problem? Yagura asked impatiently. Everything was going fine, and it looked like the rebellion would end tonight. Then. He came along. Jinpachi shivered as he continued. He used some fire jutsu that was stronger than any I've ever seen. He evaporated the whole wave. The combined jutsu of over 100 of our strongest Suiten users. Yagura couldn't believe what he was hearing. Something like that shouldn't be possible. No. There's no way. That's impossible. You must have seen things wrong. He was in denial. No, Yagura-sama. I'm sure of what I saw. Even worse, is the fact that the fire jutsu not only stopped their combined jutsu, but also proceeded to kill all of the Suiten users. Yagura leapt out of his seat. All of them? But those were our strongest. How is that possible? How about the swordsmen that were sent with them? Did they counterattack? Jinpachi shook his head.
I couldn't really see well because of the steam that resulted from the evaporated water, but when the mist settled down,
he had killed them all. What the hell are you talking about? Who killed who? You're telling me that mercenary killed all of our men? Alone? Yagura was in disbelief. Jinpachi nodded. One man killed 500, and you didn't even see how he did it? Yagura chastised Jinpachi. I'm sorry, sir, but there was too much mist and smoke everywhere. I think he might have had help from a summon, but I couldn't see what it was or what it did. Jinpachi replied. How could he have so much chakra to pull off feats like this, and then be able to summon? Yagura thought out loud. Is he a Jinchuuriki or something? I didn't see him using any of the known Jinchuuriki powers, or sense any Baijuu chakra. Besides, the other Baijuu are in the other villages, other than the Rakubi, and Utakata is not with the rebels right now. Jinpachi reported. Yagura sat back down in his seat, and began to think. After a few minutes of silence, Yagura grinned. Jinpachi, gather all of our men. Load as many men we can in my ship, and gather the ships from nearby outposts and bases. We're hitting their HQ tonight. Jinpachi paled. But Misakage-sama. Didn't just hear what I said? The Uzumaki mercenary is capable of killing hundreds by himself. He used 3 S-rank jutsus, shadow clones, and a summon, all in one battle. Yagura gave Jinpachi a smirk. Exactly. Those are all chakra-intensive feats. And as far as we know, he's not even a Jinchuuriki. That's gotta take a toll on your chakra reserves, even if you are an Uzumaki. We won't give him a chance to replenish his reserves. We'll hit him tonight. He can get the rest he wants in the afterlife. Jinpachi thought about what Yagura just said. He had been so caught up with the fact that someone was so powerful, that he never really thought about the chakra costs of such powerful jutsus. Understood, Yagura-sama. I'll send out the message to our surrounding forces immediately. We'll converge on the gates of Uzushio by 3 in the morning. Yagura nodded. Good. Tell the men here to get some rest until then. We'll hit them when they least expect it. At the rebel HQ. The base resembled a festival, following the massive victory at the Black Cliffs, where they destroyed 500 elite loyalist shinobi, all without a single loss. Their victory was cemented with Yagura's ship seeming fleeing the scene, fearing the rebels' power. The center of attention and the main figure of the celebration was the Uzumaki survivor. Of the 4,000 shinobi and civilians present on the island, only 500 shinobi were reluctantly absent from the celebrations, as Mei forced them to stay armed and sober as an emergency response force. She would have had everyone stay sober and vigilant, as she wouldn't celebrate unless Yagura was dead, but she understood the purpose of morale boosters. After losing hundreds to Yagura's raids, the morale of the rebels had been at an all-time low. She reluctantly allowed the rebels to celebrate, giving Yagura's forces a black eye of their own. However, she herself kept herself in the commander's tent after starting off the celebration with a small speech. She was alone in the tent with Ao, who hadn't drunk any alcohol since he joined the rebellion. The man could say stupid things to anger Mei at times, but she respected his professionalism. You'd think we won the war, with the way they're celebrating. Ao commented, as the sound of singing and cheering entered the tent. They don't know any better. This war has dragged on for so long, it's almost become a regular part of life for them. Let them celebrate when they can. They need something to keep up their spirits, or else life just isn't worth living. Although I'd prefer if people stayed vigilant, at least this way, we can keep up morale. Mei replied with a stern face. Ao noticed Mei looking grim, despite the massive victory. He couldn't help but be curious. Mei-sama? Yes? What is it, Ao? Mei responded. I understand why you won't celebrate with the men, since you want to stay vigilant until we have achieved our final victory, but why do you look so miserable? It's as if we lost the battle instead. Ao asked. Mei sighed as she ran her fingers through her hair. Ao, do you think I'm a good leader? Am I fit to lead these men and women, who trust me to lead them and protect them? Ao was surprised by the sudden question. What? Of course. Why else would I follow you? Why would we all put our faith in you in the first place? Why would you even ask that? There's so many powerful people out there, Ao. Maybe even more powerful than Yagura. Even if we're able to overthrow Yagura, what will we do if we face an even bigger threat? What can I do to protect our people? What if I'm just not enough? Mei asked solemnly and full of self-doubt, quite unlike her normal self. That was when Naruto made his mistimed entrance into the tent. So, this where you two were. I couldn't find you guys anywhere in the celebration. Naruto announced with a mischievous smile as he held up a bottle of sake and a couple bowls to drink it from. Ah yes. Here comes the big hero of the rebels. Sorry we weren't able to sing your praises with the others, Hiro-sama, Mei said sarcastically. Naruto and Ao were both somewhat thrown off by Mei's cold reception of Naruto, who had just saved them from a watery death. Right. I mean, I wasn't really looking for all that. That's not why I did what I did, Naruto said awkwardly, not knowing what was up with Mei right now. Oh really? Was it just for fun then? Or maybe you were hoping I would reward you with my body if you could save me like some damsel in distress? Mei replied with an attitude that seemed to indicate she was running out of patience. What? No. Of course not. Why the hell would you say that? What is wrong with you? Naruto replied defensively. What is wrong with me? What's wrong with you? Mei shouted out as she stood up from her seat, slamming the table with her hands. You had all of this power this whole time. You had the power to take the fight against Yagura directly. You had the power to save the lives of hundreds of my men. And what did you do instead? You just do the bare minimum. Just enough to keep yourself from being dead weight. Is this just a game to you? Are the lives of my men just a joke to you? Do they mean nothing since they're not from Konoha? Naruto's face changed into a serious one that Mei hadn't seen before. A joke? The bare minimum? You've got to be shitting me. Tell me, who's been more useful than me? I've been busting my ass for you since I came here. How dare you say I'm treating this as a joke? Mei was furious. Then why did you wait until now to take it seriously? How many people did you see die, while you were hiding your true strength? How many families torn apart? How many made orphans? What did you expect when you hired me? Did you expect me to be your savior and win the war for you? Let me set things straight. I'm not here to win the war for you. I'm here to help you win the war. Do you understand the difference? Naruto rebutted. Oh please, why don't you enlighten me, Naruto-sama? Mei replied sarcastically. Naruto scowled at Mei's response. What would your victory mean if Konoha won it for you? Just swooped right in, and solved all of your problems for you, as if you weren't able to do it yourself. Like how a mother might open a lid on a tight jar for her 5-year-old child. Is that what you wanted? To be babied? If that's what you wanted, all you needed to do was ask. We'd love to show the whole world that Konoha is superior to Kiri, and have you in our debt. Hell, why not just make you our vassal? You can't even protect yourself, right? We could just station our shinobi in your village to make sure it stays safe. You know what? Why not just hang Konoha's banners in your village? I'm sure there are many in Konoha who'd love that. Mei glared angrily at Naruto's tirade, but remained silent. I was helping the way I helped, because it would mean so much more if Kiri rid itself of its tyrant on its own strength. What is a victory if you're just a bystander? A victory won through blood, sweat, tears. A victory won by its own people. A message to the world that Kiri will not be idle in its fight for its own liberty. A message to the world that Kiri doesn't need a foreign savior. Wouldn't that mean more? Naruto questioned the rebel leader. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it does need a savior. Maybe an easy victory off of someone else's back to save your own skin is more important. After all, you have to make sure nobody gets hurt, right? Silly me. Naruto remarked as he turned around to leave without waiting for Mei's response. He was tired of the bullshit. How dare you talk to our leader so disrespectfully? The insolence, Ao yelled towards the back of a Naruto that was leaving the tent. Naruto ignored Ao. He turned around one last time, at the entrance of the tent. How dare you accuse me of not caring about the lives of the people here? How dare you? He growled out. The faces of Haku, Kimimaro, Suigetsu, Zabuza Ao, and even Mangetsu flashed through his mind, Mei's smiling face appearing at the end, before he cleared his mind. You guys can have this sake. I've lost my appetite for it. He dropped the sake and the bowls on the floor, where it rolled after a loud clang. Mei watched Naruto leave in silence, her head chaotic with all sorts of thoughts. Why, the nerve on that boy. Humph. Back in my day, we actually treated our leaders with respect. Ao harumphed. Ao. Mei called out. Yes, Mei-sama? Ao replied, expecting her to lash out at him. I'd like to be alone. You may retire to your tent for the night. Mei told Ao. But, Mei-sama. Ao tried to respond, before Mei cut him off. Ao. Please. I want to be alone. Please. Mei replied in a tired voice. Sensing the heavy atmosphere, Ao reluctantly agreed. At the mouth of the tent, Ao stopped, before he turned around to speak. Mei-sama? Your question about if you're good enough to be our leader? We don't follow you just because you're the strongest. We follow you because you can see the big picture. You can see the things that others can't. But most importantly, we follow you because we believe in your ideals. You don't treat us as disposable pawns, the way Yagura treats his men. You actually care for our lives. But we don't need you to protect us. Just let us fight by your side, as we have so far. I don't know what the others might say, but if you ask me, you're more than fit to be our leader. I'd follow you to the very gates of hell. He then turned around and left, leaving Mei speechless. Once Ao left, Mei collapsed into her seat. She was so confused. She didn't know what to think anymore. What was supposed to come first? The lives of the people following her? Or the ideal they were dying for? These last few days had been one tough revelation after another. She had too much on her plate. She barely had any time to process her roller coaster ride of emotions, with wave after wave of tragedies, huge events, and revelations coming at her at once. She slumped over, placing her head over her crossed arms. She didn't know why, but she couldn't stop the tears from wetting her cheeks. At a rebel watchtower. Man, do you smell that? Looks like they're enjoying some good-ass food. I'd sure like to get some better food than some stupid ration bar. These things taste like shit. One squad member told his teammates. Right, and I'm sure you know what shit tastes like. His Kunoichi teammate responded with a teasing smirk. The first shinobi scowled. No. But they probably taste like this ration bar. I'm sure of it. He replied as he threw the ration bar into the ocean. Way to lose, rock, paper, scissors, captain. The third teammate said sarcastically to the team leader. Oh hush. It could have been anyone. If anything, it was probably your shitty luck which spread to me. The squad leader brushed off the complaints. Now shut the hell up, and just keep an eye out for Yagura's men. The first team member snorted. As if they'll turn up any time soon, after that thrashing they got today. Yeah, whatever. Don't act like it was you who gave them the thrashing. The Kunoichi of the group reminded him. Who cares who kicked ass? The important thing is that we won. As such, we should be down there with the rest of the people, celebrating. The first shinobi spoke. His team all agreed with him internally, but all they could do was chuckle. The third teammate punched him in the shoulder. Just keep an eye out, idiot. We better not catch you sleeping, like last time. Later at night, around 3 a.m. The celebrations had ended by then, and everyone had gone to sleep. Everyone but the unlucky emergency response teams that were stationed around the island, keeping watch. Hey, wake those two idiots up. It's our turn to sleep. The captain told the Kunoichi of the squad, who had stayed awake with him, keeping watch. Oi, wake up. It's your shift now. The Kunoichi told her sleeping squad mates as she kicked their sleeping forms. Just 5 more minutes. The sleepy rebel replied, as he tried to get comfortable again. As the team prepared to change shifts, a thick mist was rolling in from the ocean. However, they were too busy to notice. Every minute you spend not standing guard, is another minute we'll spend sleeping when it's our turn. Hurry up. The Kunoichi shouted before she began to open up her canister of water. She splashed the water on the two sleepy shinobis' faces, waking them up immediately. Hey! What the hell? They shouted in unison. Hee, that should teach you to take your sweet time getting up. The Kunoichi chuckled. The two wiped the water from their faces, and were getting up as they grumbled. Sai here, gimme your hands. The Kunoichi held her hands out to help her teammates get up. They both grabbed her hands, and tried to stand up. They had almost stood up, when the girl suddenly fell forward, causing them to both fall on their rears. No. Sachiko. The captain cried out in horror. Hey! What the hell? That hurts. The first shinobi yelled out, as he wiped what he thought was water off of his face. The two shinobi looked at their Kunoichi teammate, wondering what caused her to fall, and what the captain of their squad was freaking out over, until they saw the kunai that had entered her brain from the back of her skull. The first shinobi looked at his palm, and saw that the water he wiped off of his face was actually Sachiko's blood. He wasn't even able to process what had happened, when a blast of water put a hole through his chest. He crumpled to the floor, lifeless. The captain and the last remaining squad member turned to see the direction the attack came from. 3 loyalist shinobi jumped into the guard tower, with wicked grins on their faces. The captain of the rebel guard squad drew his sword and charged at them. Go and ring the alarm. I'll hold them off. The third squad member didn't want to leave his captain to hold off 3 shinobi, but he knew he had to ring the alarm to let the others know, or the whole camp would be in danger of being caught asleep. After a second of hesitation, he began to run towards the bell. He was about to ring the bell, when his hand was knocked off course by a round projectile. He instinctively looked towards the floor to see what had hit him. It was his captain's decapitated head. He knew he was in trouble now. He reached for the bell, only to find gleaming steel of a strange-looking sword blocking his path. Reaching for something? A cruel voice asked with a sharp, wicked grin to match. JJJ Jinpachi. The rebel stuttered as he began to stumble backwards when he recognized who was in front of him. Jinpachi roughly grabbed the rebel by the collar, and threw him at his men. Throw him off the cliff. The 3 men grinned as they seized the terrified rebel. The rebel shinobi screamed as he was tossed off of the guard tower, and towards the jagged rocks at the bottom of the cliff. It's over. This is where I die. The man thought to himself. We let our guards down, and now we're all dead. He suddenly realized that the others were counting on them to warn them if an attack was coming, but they had failed to do that. There would be hundreds, if not thousands of more deaths due to their failure. The least I can do now is let the others know they're here. As his dying act, he drew a kunai with an explosive tag attached to it, and threw it high in the air, hoping the explosion will catch the attention of the other guard towers. He held up his hands in the seal to detonate the tag when it reached the apex of its skyward journey. He was about to detonate the seal, when Jinpachi engulfed the tag in the kunai with a whip of water, drenching and deactivating the tag. Nice try. But no luck this time. Go and meet your friends in hell, Jinpachi sneered. No. I failed. The falling man whispered to himself, right before he was dashed against the sharp rocks, and died instantly. Jinpachi and the 3 shinobi with him smiled when they saw his body ragdoll when it smashed against the sharp rocks. Well, that was fun, Jinpachi said with a smirk. He looked to his right and left, and saw the fires in the other guard towers go off, as the others were also ambushed. Let's get the rest of the party started. The men with him grinned. With Mei. It had been hours since she had her argument with Naruto, but she couldn't motivate herself to leave her seat in the commander's tent. She had sat there for hours, just thinking. She had been thinking over how she had been performing as a leader, what she should be prioritizing, and also about how she had acted in front of Naruto. Naruto-kun was right. All of our sacrifices will mean nothing if we depend on another village to solve our problems for us. We can't let another village defeat Yagura. This war is as much a war for our right to live, but also a war to send a message to the world. If we fail here, we'll never be respected by the other villages, and we won't be able to respect ourselves either. Naruto-kun. You held yourself back to give us the chance to handle our own problems, while still helping us with major issues. Mei concluded. I was too caught up with my own self-doubt and emotional issues to see the big picture. I have to find Naruto-kun, and apologize for my behavior earlier. Mei realized, when she suddenly heard screams coming from outside the tent. Warning bells began to go off. What in the world? Mei whispered to herself. Mei-sama, Chojuro shouted out as he ran into the tent, breathless. Chojuro. What the hell is going on outside? Mei asked. Mei-sama. The loyalists. They found our base. We're under attack. Mei's heart sank. The moment she had been fearing all along was finally upon her. No. I knew it. We should never have let our guard down, Mei mumbled under her breath. Chojuro. Wake up Ao, Zabuza, and Mangetsu. Get yourself armed, and guide the civilians towards the ships. Escort them to safety with Ao and Mangetsu. Mei ordered. How about you, Mei-sama? Chojuro asked. Mei's eyes burned with anger. I'm going to show these bastards you can come here freely, but they don't get to leave without my permission. Chojuro shivered a little at Mei's cold fury. He saluted Mei and left to carry out his orders. So, you want to play rough, huh? I'll show you rough, Mei said as a cruel smile formed on her face. The rebel camp. The camp was in utter chaos, as the emergency response team had been caught unprepared, and lost almost half their men before they were able to form any organized resistance against the ambushing loyalists. This resistance was quickly falling apart at the brutal advance of the loyalists, who had both the element of surprise, and the advantage of numbers on their side. The civilians were in utter disarray as they tried to gather what belongings they could, before they were dragged off by a few sober shinobi towards the ships. The rest of the shinobi were unable to recover from their night of drinking effectively, and stumbled along as they tried their best to sober up and get armed. Come on men. Break through this crumbling line, and we'll get to their soft, drunken underbelly. One loyalist officer yelled to his men, who were making rapid progress on their section. The last remaining 50 rebels on that section hopelessly braced themselves for a surge of over 500 loyalists. One rebel ninja grabbed the hand of the kunoichi next to him. I never got to tell you, but I love you. I wish I was able to tell you earlier. I was hoping I could tell you this when we won the war and re-entered Kiri, but it looks like this is the end. The kunoichi gave him a sad smile, and squeezed his hand tighter. I love you too. At least we could be together at the end. The two of them braced for a hopeless fight to the death, similar to their comrades around them, as the loyalists charged at them. Yotan, lava truffle jutsu. A female voice yelled out, as several large boulders landed on the mass of charging loyalists, crushing several of them to death. As destructive as the massive boulders were, the real damage came when they exploded, spraying lava all around. Dozens of loyalists screamed in pain before they were killed by the hot lava that burned through their flesh. Lava release? But that means. One loyalist officer thought out loud, before his face paled. Mei-sama. The rebels shouted out in relief, when they saw Mei running to aid them, flanked by dozens of shinobi on either side. Kill them all, Mei shouted out to her rebels, and they began their counter-attack on the loyalists. Mei stopped behind her line of charging rebels, and began to form hand seals for another jutsu. Suten, Suryusan Renden no Jutsu. Water release, water dragon triple step technique, Mei yelled out, as 3 massive dragons of water formed around her, and flew towards the loyalists, whose momentum had completely died with Mei's arrival. 2 of the water dragons circled around to either flank, and smashed into it with such force, that men were thrown towards the middle with enough force to break bones. The dragon in the middle flew towards the middle, and punched a hole right through the middle of the formation, where the rebels penetrated. Shit. It's her. Fall back. The leader of loyalists on that section commanded. However, Mei was not feeling particularly merciful tonight. You'd abandon a lady all by herself? That's not very manly of you, Mei teased seductively, as she began to form hand seals for her next attack. Why don't we spend a steamy night together? Futten, Suri Kidri no Jutsu. Boil release, lovely mist technique. A heart composed of condensed pink steam shot out from Mei's lips when she blew a kiss towards the leader of the fleeing loyalists, and headed straight towards the back of the formation of the loyalists, putting the fleeing shinobi in the middle of the pink heart attack and the rebel charge. The condensed heart hit the leader in the back, and instantly released all of the compressed acidic fog, cutting off the escape of the loyalists and melting dozens of them to death. The loyalists looked on fear, as their comrades writhed in pain as their flesh melted to their bones, before their bones melted as well. She's a demon. Some of them gasped out. Mei heard the murmurs, despite the sounds of the battle raging around her. Now that's not something you call a lady, she said with a smile, before she formed a dragon of water that began to spin rapidly into a waterspout. I guess I'll have to teach you some manners in dealing with a lady. The loyalists paled. With a flesh-melting mist at their back, angry rebels at their front, and a tornado made up of a water dragon tearing up their formation, it looked like they were in for a journey to the afterlife. With Kimimaro, Haku, and Suigetsu. Naruto's team had their tents nearby each other and were underage, and were not allowed to drink. So when the battle broke out, the 3 of them emerged nearly at the same time, and quickly organized themselves into their squad. Shit. Where's Naruto Taiku? Suigetsu yelled, as he parried a sword strike with his own, before shooting the man in the chest with the water pistol technique. I don't know. I haven't seen him since the celebration. Haku answered back, as she skewered several loyalists with the new abari. It doesn't matter. We'll look for him after we kill all of these insects. Kimimaro replied calmly, as sharp bones began to extrude from his wrists, shoulders, knees, and the back of his elbows, which he used in his elegant dance of death, which sent numerous souls around him to the Shinigami. What the hell is up with these kids? They're monsters. One loyalist shinobi commented, seeing how easily these teens were carving up the platoons that were present. Haku. Formation D. Suigetsu called out, before he released a bunch of water from his seal, which began to pool around the ankles of every shinobi around. Got it, Haku yelled back, before she channeled her Hyoton chakra into the water, freezing everyone in place. What the fuck? I can't move. Several loyalists shouted towards each other. Teshi Senden. 10-finger drilling bullets, Kimimaro called out calmly, firing the hardened bones at the tip of his fingers like bullets, dropping 10 shinobi dead. Haku followed up with a barrage of icicles, which skewered another 12 shinobi to death in a hail of icy projectiles. Suigetsu didn't have multi-target jutsu like the other 2, but enjoyed himself as she shot the stuck loyalists in with his water pistol technique. Once the numbers were thinned out, they drew their swords, or bones, and began to dismantle the remaining terrified loyalists, in a storm of steel, ice, water, and bones. Soon, over 8 squads of loyalists lay dead at their feet. We need to find the others, and organize a counter-attack. Kimimaro told the other 2, who nodded and followed him. With the civilians. Hurry up. We don't have much time. Get your asses on the ships. Mangetsu called out, as he and the other shinobi with him helped the fleeing civilians board the ships. About a third of the civilians were on board, when screams started breaking out from further in the back. When rebel shinobi rushed over to see what happened, they saw a man with a braided beard leading hundreds of men towards the ships. Going somewhere? The man asked with a smirk, before he began swinging his strange-looking sword at the rebels. Boom. 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 Mangetsu watched explosions going off a short distance away. Every time the man swung the sword, an explosion occurred, sending civilians and shinobi alike flying away. Mangetsu gritted his teeth. Jinpachi. Jinpachi smashed his legendary sword, Shibuki the exploding sword, into another rebel shinobi who dared to get in his way, in an attempt to stop him from harming the civilians. He was rewarded for his efforts by being blown to bits. Jinpachi looked up to see Mangetsu glaring him down. He responded with a toothy smile. "Well, hello, my old friend." Jinpachi sarcastically greeted Mangetsu. "Don't you dare call me that, you damn traitor," Mangetsu bellowed back. Now. No need to get our panties in a bunch. We all do things we have to do." Jinpachi replied cheekily. The eye not covered by his eye patch glared at Mangetsu. "Besides, in my eyes, or should I say you lot are the traitors. I'm the only who stayed loyal to Kiri, while you threw your lot in with the bloodline freaks, since you're one yourself. Kiri is more than Yagura, you stupid piece of shit. Can't you see he's destroying Kiri? He destroyed our village's advantage with bloodline users, he destroyed our population and our economy with this stupid war, and he destroyed the 7 swordsmen of the mist, by turning us against each other," Mangetsu spat out. "You would say that, wouldn't you? You got to enjoy all of the benefits of being a bloodline aristocrat, while us regular people were treated as second-class citizens. Our population will rebound, as will our economy, when this war ends. We'll rebuild Kiri without you freaks as our overlords. And as for the 7 swordsmen? We'll just kill you all, and reclaim the swords. We'll recreate the order, with me as the new leader." Jinpachi replied. "You? The leader? Please, you can't even wield the shibuki as well as I can, and it's your sword. You think you're fit to be the leader?" Mangetsu taunted. Jinpachi scowled. "You always did think you were better than everyone else. I'll teach you your place today, you traitorous scum." With that, the 2 swordsmen rushed at each other, flanked by their men on either side. The 2 lines of swordsmen clashed, with the sound of ringing metal echoing through the night. Chapter 35, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 6. At the Rebel HQ. The battle between the rebels and the loyalists raged all across the island, with around 4,000 loyalist shinobi arriving on the island to face 2,700 rebels. Compounding to the disadvantage in numbers, the rebels had been caught off guard, and most of them were drowsy and not fully armed after a night of drunken revelry. There were legends of some fighters that fought better when inebriated. Unfortunately, no such fighter existed amongst the rebels. The emergency response teams were almost totally destroyed in the first wave of attacks, and the drunk shinobi were definitely not in the best condition to fight. However, despite the fact that the rebels were losing ground on the whole, there still were pockets of successful resistance, especially where powerhouses like the rebel leaders were present. With Mei. "That should teach you to come here uninvited," Mei stated, as she stood over the smoldering and molten bodies of the Loyalists battalion that had been completely wiped out by the counter-attacking rebels led by her. "Mei-sama. Our allies on our right require assistance. They look like they might crumble at any minute," one of her shinobi reported. "Those who are tired may rest for 10 minutes before joining up with us. The rest of you, follow me," Mei commanded, and she headed towards Zabuza's position. With Zabuza, "There's no place to run. Fight to the death." Zabuza ordered the frightened shinobi around him, as he swung his massive sword to dice his enemies into pieces like a human meat grinder. He and his band of rebels were at the center of the camp, where the fight was fiercest. The close proximity to the center also meant they were the ones who felt safest, and in turn, were the drunkest. Zabuza himself had been heavily drinking, and was not in the best shape. However, Zabuza was still Zabuza. The regular Jonin and Chunin Yagura had available after the death of 500 of their most brilliant shinobi were not really a fair match for Zabuza, slightly drunk or not. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for the other rebels with him. Zabuza stumbled to the right to dodge a blast of water that was aimed to take his head off. "Shit. That was close," he growled to himself, as he raised his massive sword to block a hail of shuriken and kunai that were thrown at him. "There's too many of them, Zabuza-sama. We need reinforcements, or we need to retreat," one rebel told Zabuza. Zabuza quickly went through the hand seals necessary to create water clones to give him some breathing room, and to add to their diminishing numbers. "Oh yeah? And where exactly do you think we can escape to?" "Our overcrowded ships, which is going to be closely tailed by Yagura's men," Zabuza sarcastically and angrily responded, as he formed some more hand seals for another jutsu. Suten, Daibakufu no Jutsu. Water release, great waterfall technique, Zabuza called out, releasing a massive amount of water into the air, which fell upon the loyalists like a gigantic waterfall. Some of the slower Chunin and the dead bodies around were swept away by the technique, but being skilled Suten users themselves, many of the Jonin were able to escape the jutsu that was weakened by Zabuza's bad condition. "Ah shit, that should have been much bigger and powerful," Zabuza lamented. Still, that gives me more room to maneuver, and less enemies to deal with. Zabuza brought his sword to his side, and ran towards a platoon captain, who was getting up from the attack. He intended to cut him in half, but was stopped by the combined effort of 5 shinobi and their swords. The massive size and momentum of the Kyuubi Kiribocho drove them back, but it still gave others the opening to fire upon Zabuza with their own jutsu and shuriken. He used his sharply honed reflexes to dodge most of them, but was pushed back by a water jutsu that clipped him, which disoriented him just long enough to be pegged by several shuriken. He was able to position his arms in front of his body to minimize the damage, but having sharp objects sticking out of your arms was a dangerous position to be in, especially if you were a swordsman, and used jutsu. Zabuza-sama. A concerned rebel called out, before turning her attention back at the enemies bearing down on her. Shit. Zabuza snarled in anger. If he didn't drink so much last night, he would never have been put in this position. Damn that drinking contest he had with Mangetsu. His bleeding arms hurt to move, but he didn't have time to focus on that right now. He'd worry about that when every loyalist scum around him was dead. He was still able to cut down the fodder shinobi that came at him, but his movement was noticeably slower and less precise than it had been earlier. Some of the sharper loyalist shinobi noticed, and pounced on the wounded Zabuza. Zabuza maneuvered his blade to block attacks from 5 shinobi at the same time. Despite being fairly successful in blocking and parrying the attacks, he was unable to attack, and was being driven back. The rebel resistance in the area had been anchored around him, so when he began to be pushed back, the rebels began to be pushed back, and their morale was dropping. Yotan, Yokai no Jutsu. Lava release, melting apparition technique. A huge blanket of lava suddenly appeared over the heads of around 30 loyalists that were pressuring the rebels. Ugh! Screams were quickly cut short as the piping hot, viscous lava adhered to the unlucky souls, and painfully burned them to death. The stench of burning flesh and cloth filled the air, making many of the surrounding people gag. Look! It's the loyalist shinobi trying to warn his comrades had his windpipe crushed when Mei drove the heel of her high-heeled shinobi sandals into it with a flying side kick. He broke his neck and died when Mei landed on the ground with her foot still on his neck. She immediately threw a kunai with an explosive tag attached with each hand, causing deadly explosions amongst her clumped-up foes. Mei immediately followed through by forming hand seals, and then blew a deadly pink heart of acidic steam with a kiss at an unlucky shinobi, which instantly dissolved him and formed a deadly wall between the rebels and the loyalists. Zabuza. Are you all right? Mei asked with concern in her eyes, as the reinforcement she brought with her quickly reformed defensive lines. Why yeah. It's just a scratch. Zabuza replied. A scratch, my ass. You look like shit, Zabuza. Mei chastised Zabuza, who had the decency to look ashamed. Look at you. Drinking like we had won the war, and now you can barely fight. If you were sober like Ao, this fodder would never have had the chance to do this to you. By now, the loyalists reorganized somewhat, and used a combination of water jutsu to clear the air of the acidic mist. Get some first aid, Zabuza, Mei commanded without facing him, as her attention was on the enemies in front of her. I can still fight. Zabuza replied, reluctant to fall back while his leader fought without him. Who said I was letting you get away from fighting? Just get basic treatment so you won't be a hindrance. I better see you back in the fray as soon as possible. Now, stop wasting time and go, she said with authority. Zabuza nodded and fell back to get emergency treatment. Mei glared at all of the loyalists in front of her, who looked wary and reluctant to engage in battle with her. Hurt my boys, will you? I guess I'll have to show you just how hot I can really get, she said with a suggestive, yet frightening smirk on her face as she winked at them. The loyalists in front of her gulped. Yotan, Yoru Dan no Jutsu. Lava release, lava dragon bullet technique. With Mangetsu and Jinpachi. Jinpachi swung at Mangetsu furiously with his strange, yet deadly blade. Mangetsu, however, was a master of all of the 7 swords. He knew just how deadly the Shibuki was. However, his experience with the sword also meant he knew how to fight against it. Mangetsu used the chakra forms of the Hiramkare to keep Jinpachi at a distance, while changing the forms to keep his attacks unpredictable. The explosions from the Shibuki were meant to kill a single person with a direct strike instead of blowing up huge areas, and this meant Mangetsu was mostly safe from the deadly explosions. Jinpachi gritted his teeth as he tried his best to deliver a fatal blow to Mangetsu. He had always hated Mangetsu, and had a bit of an inferiority complex towards him, even if he never showed it. Mangetsu was the only one among them with a bloodline, but he also happened to be one of the strongest, even without the bloodline. Jinpachi was a skilled swordsman, and feared by his enemies, but he was still considered one of the weaker members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, forming the unofficial B team of the order, along with Kushimaru, Raiga, and Jinin. They made up for it by being crueler than the others, but it had always been a sore point for Jinpachi. Even though Mangetsu was not at his best, due to the drinking competition against Zabuza from the night before, Mangetsu was a prodigy when it came to kenjutsu. He grinned as he parried each of Jinpachi's blows and smacked him around with the flat side of the hiram-kare, in an effort to humiliate him. It worked. Jinpachi was absolutely furious. Even with all of the training he did after the rebels broke off from Kiri, he was still unable to match, let alone best, Mangetsu in a sword fight. However, just because he couldn't defeat him one-on-one in skill didn't mean he would lose. Jinpachi calmed down, and even grinned back at Mangetsu when he came up with a plan. He had been observing and learning from Yagura, serving as his right-hand man. If you can't win head-on, then use devious methods to achieve your goals. Jinpachi jumped back to avoid a swing from the hammer form of the hiram-kare. Mangetsu smirked and placed his sword over his shoulder, with his free hand on his hip. "Hey! Realize you're no match for me yet?" Jinpachi analyzed the scene around him and smirked. He pulled out several kunai with explosive tags on them. "You sure love explosions, don't you?" Mangetsu said tauntingly. Meanwhile, somewhere in the wilderness, a blonde missing nin sneezed. "When will you learn your petty explosions can't touch me? Now, maybe if you had those Uzumaki explosive tags? That might do something." Jinpachi gave Mangetsu an ominous smile, though Mangetsu couldn't understand what he was looking so smug about. Jinpachi surprised Mangetsu by throwing the explosive tag-attached kunais at the surrounding civilians, and the ships they were boarding. Mangetsu's jaws opened in shock, and he quickly used his hydrification bloodline to try to disarm the explosive tags flying at the ships. He managed to stop a few, but failed to block all of them. Dozens died in the surprise attack of explosions, and 2 ships began to leak water, after massive holes were blown in their hulls. They began to sink. Mangetsu looked on in horror as he watched 2 ships slowly sink, as people jumped overboard into the cold waters, trying to survive. Jinpachi used the distraction to quickly close in, and smashed Mangetsu's sword with the shibuki, causing an explosion which sent Mangetsu flying. Mangetsu was able to use his liquid body to avoid taking too much damage from the tumbling, but he had been separated from his sword in the process. "Hey, for such a great swordsman as yourself, you seem to be doing a bad job of keeping your sword on you," Jinpachi taunted with a toothy smirk. Mangetsu scowled. "You fucking bastard. Those were innocent civilians. No one's truly innocent in a war. Not even civilians. They chose which side they wanted to support, and they paid the price," Jinpachi countered, as he stepped closer to stand over Mangetsu. Mangetsu was in trouble. Even with the hydrification technique, he knew taking a direct hit from the shibuki would be difficult to recover from. "You're a real cunt, you know that? You knew you couldn't beat me, so you went and targeted civilians." Jinpachi cackled in response. "Look at your pathetic excuses. We're shinobi. We use whatever we can to win. If killing some bloodline-loving, traitorous scum gives me that edge, I'd gladly kill 100, no, thousands of them. Their noble sacrifice was necessary to put you in your place, at my feet, groveling for mercy. Now beg." Mangetsu just grinned back. "Beg? Beg you for what? Even if you kill me, you'll know deep inside that you never defeated me as a swordsman. Enjoy living your entire life without the chance of truly defeating me, knowing you'll always be a B-tier swordsman, who got lucky. So go ahead. Kill me. I'll wait for you in hell, so I can kick your ass in this life and the next." Jinpachi was absolutely livid. He tuned the whole world out to focus on killing the bloodline bastard in front of him. "Humph. You'll regret saying that, when I find your annoying brother, and torture him before I kill him too." Jinpachi raised his sword above his head, to destroy Mangetsu. Mangetsu didn't want to give Jinpachi the satisfaction of seeing him disturbed, but he couldn't help but have his smirk falter at the mention of his brother. "Fuck you, Jinpachi. Fuck you, and the whore mother who gave birth to your rotten ass." Jinpachi smiled when he realized he got to Mangetsu. "Goodbye, bloodline freak. I'll send your brother to join you real soon, drop by drop," he yelled as he began to bring down the sword. Mangetsu stared Jinpachi in the eyes unflinchingly as he faced his death. He only blinked when his face was splashed by a warm liquid. "What the hell?" Mangetsu wondered what got on his face when he reopened his eyes, only to be shocked by the sight of the massive blade of the hiram-kare penetrating Jinpachi's torso. Jinpachi trembled in pain, as he slowly looked behind him to see who had stabbed him from the back. Chojuro stood behind him, holding the two handles of the massive sword. "Why you?" Jinpachi gasped out, before coughing up blood. Chojuro pulled the blade out, and the massive gaping wound on Jinpachi's torso spilled out his blood and organs. Jinpachi passed out from the rapidly dropping blood pressure, and collapsed onto the ground, where he died in seconds. "Hey, are you alright? Mangetsu-sama?" Chojuro asked timidly. Mangetsu chuckled and wiped Jinpachi's blood off of his face as he stood up. Chojuro was brave one second, and timid in the next. What a weird kid. He ruffled the teen's hair. "Good work, kid. I thought he'd never shut up." Mangetsu replied. "Now, about that sword you're holding." Oh. Sorry. I found it on the ground, and intended to return it to you." "Promise," Chojuro said defensively. Mangetsu laughed again. "You're not too bad with that sword. Why don't you hold on to it, and show me what else you can do with it?" Chojuro's eyes widened. Surely you don't mean that. This is your sword. Besides, only a member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist is allowed to wield these legendary blades." Mangetsu rubbed his chin with his hand. You're right." Chojuro slightly deflated as he handed the Hiramkare to Mangetsu. However, Mangetsu didn't accept the sword. "However, there seems to be one less member as of 5 seconds ago," he said as he pointed to the now pale, disemboweled body of Jinpachi. "Looks like we'll need to add a new member." Chojuro's eyes widened again. No. He wasn't about to say what Chojuro was thinking. Right? Mangetsu gave Chojuro a toothy smile. "Welcome to the team, Chojuro." Mangetsu-sama," Chojuro shouted out with teary eyes. "As your initiation mission, your job is to use your new sword to send these loyalist bastards to hell, where they belong. Consider it your hazing. Now go." Mangetsu ordered, and Chojuro saluted Mangetsu and ran off to help the others. Mangetsu pried the shibuki out of Jinpachi's cold hands. "Now, you can get comfortable and lie right there, as I show you how you're supposed to use this sword, amateur." Mangetsu taunted the dead Jinpachi, as he jumped into action. With Naruto. Naruto had walked for hours to the most remote corner of the island. After that altercation with Mei, he wanted to be alone, and far from all of the festivities. He sat down, and leaned against a rock, as he faced the open ocean before him, watching the shimmering reflection of the moon on the water. He sat there, letting his mind cycle through all of the thoughts he had pushed to the back of his mind, thoughts he had been too busy to deal with, being occupied with the civil war in Kiri. Naturally, he began to think about his sister, and his team back in Konoha. "Narumi. How are you doing? Is Sasuke dealing with his issues well? Is Hinata doing better with her family? Did Kakashi catch Suin? Are you keeping in touch with Fu? I bet you'd love to see Haku again. She'd love to see you too." Naruto thought to himself, as he thought about Narumi, who he missed dearly. He hadn't been away from her for such a long period before. She was almost like a daughter to him, with the way he had raised her before she even turned 1. How long will it be before this war ends and I get to see you again? Maybe Mei is right, and I should just hurry up and assassinate Yagura. He shook his head at that thought. No. As painful as it is, watching people I got to know die, I have to let them have this, for themselves. It's the only way to have a stable Kiri. They need this for their own identity. I can't let my feelings get in the way. He then remembered the argument he had with Mei, and the accusations that were thrown at him. He didn't show it, but it had hurt. He had gotten relatively close with a lot of people, and quite invested in this rebellion. To say he was barely making himself useful, and to say he didn't value their lives, it was frustrating, to say the least. "How dare you say I don't care, Mei? How dare you?" Naruto whispered to himself, as he threw small stones into the ocean. He watched the ripples the stones he threw made, until he started to notice other things. Small bits of wood and cloth floated above the water. He didn't think much of it at first, but more and more became visible. What the hell? Who's throwing away all this trash? Naruto thought to himself. He got closer to see what the floating debris was. One of the pieces of wood floating towards him was a piece of carved wood. He fished it out of the water, and examined it more closely. Is this a piece of railing from a ship? It doesn't look like it's been out at sea for too long. Which means it was recently broken off. He took a look around, and began to see larger objects floating out at sea. He used the water walking technique to get a closer look at a particular object that caught his attention. It was a corpse of a rebel shinobi. What the fuck? What's going on here? Naruto gasped out to himself. He immediately got an ominous feeling, and looked behind him. He saw smoke rising. Is that from our camp? His heart sank when he realized what could be going on. No. It can't be. He immediately started to run towards the camp, as fast as feet would take him. With Mei and Zabuza. Even with Zabuza's return to the fray and Mei reinforcement, the center of the base was a terrible place to be. The defense they had set up in the passages guarding the center of the base quickly crumbled with the surprise attack, and the center was forced to take on more and more fronts on different sides. The retreating rebels from the outer areas of the island did come with a few benefits, in that they brought more manpower and consolidated the center, which was a huge step up from the ragtag group of drunk shinobi that were barely held together only by Mei's fierce leadership and prowess. With their help, Mei was able to slowly move her forces backwards, until they had their backs to the docks where Ao and Mangetsu had formed a stable defensive zone. Still, they were surrounded on three sides, and escape seemed unlikely. The rebels were down to just below 1,400 shinobi, having lost almost half of their men in the nighttime raid, while the loyalists still had over 3,000, more than doubling their forces. The western flank of the rebels was struggling the most, having been hit particularly hard at the start of the battle, with the fewest number of reinforcements joining them. Being bunched up in a statically was the worst position for shinobi to be in, especially if you didn't have many defensive jutsu. The rebels periodically used Suten, Suijinheki, water release, water encampment wall, for defense, but the chakra cost for the jutsu meant it was heavily inefficient as a means to stop the rain of kunai and shuriken that came their way, which cost absolutely no chakra. The loyalists had the numbers to simply throw jutsu as bait to make the rebels use the wall of water for defense, wait for them to cancel the jutsu, then throw a barrage of projectiles and jutsu at them, killing many with each wave. Sir, we can't keep this up. We need reinforcements, or we need to change our tactics. Something needs to change or we'll all die here like sitting ducks. One shinobi told the officer in charge of the flank. The officer pulled a kunai out of his bloodied shoulder. And what would you have us do? Charge at them? That's exactly what they want. Once we're out of formation, they'll surround us and cut us to pieces. Then they'll hit the exposed rear of our allies. No. Even if we can only serve as glorified meat shields, we'll stand our ground and protect our allies to our dying breaths. That's when the shinobi around him realized how bad of a situation they were in. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before they would all be killed. They weren't even expecting to win or to get away. It was hopeless. Suigetsu. Kimimaro. Formation B. A voice called out from behind the loyalist lines. Got it. Suigetsu called out, and created a dragon of water which flew straight towards the middle of their formation. A few unlucky loyalists were blown away by the attack, but most of them wisely stepped to either side of the dragon to let it pass by them harmlessly. Suigetsu grinned, and released his jutsu. His part in the formation Naruto had created for his team was set up. Haku immediately followed through by freezing the long puddle that was left behind, forming a trail of ice that led all the way to the rebel lines. The three teens jumped on the ice, and used the slippery ice as a highway towards the rebel lines. Loyalists on either side of the ice trail tried to attack the three teens, but Kimimaro in the front of the formation easily dispatched them with his sharpened bones, using the speed from skating on the ice to boost his momentum and penetrative power, while Haku and Suigetsu provided ranged attacks from behind him. Leaving a bloody trail of bodies behind them, the three arrived at the exhausted western flank. Kill those bastards. Focus your fire on those three bloodline freaks. A furious officer of the loyalist battalions on the western flank ordered. Suigetsu. Haku. Formation E. Kimimaro ordered calmly, using the next formation of the playbook Naruto created for them. Everyone. Use the Suijinheki, water encampment wall, on my command. Suigetsu ordered. Despite outranking the technically still Jinan shinobi, they were awestruck at how powerful and efficient the three were, and they obeyed Suigetsu and cast their jutsu when he gave the word. Now. Walls of water covered the entire front, blocking the hail of kunai and shuriken that were thrown at the rebels. It's fine. Just wait for them to release the jutsu, and throw the next wave. The loyalist officer commanded. However, Formation E wasn't done just yet. The loyalists watched in shock, as the water wall in front of them began to solidify into ice. Haku fell to one knee after she froze the entire wall. Even though she had saved a lot of chakra by freezing the existing wall of water instead of creating her own wall of ice, she had expended a huge amount of chakra, and was running dangerously low. Well done, Haku. Now, Suigetsu, a boost please. Kimimaro asked Suigetsu. Got it. Suten, water pillar jutsu. The water below Kimimaro began to coalesce underneath him, until it created a pillar that raised him above the wall. There! Everyone! Aim at that Kaguya bastard! A loyalist officer roared, and his men responded by throwing projectile after Kimimaro. Kimimaro didn't even blink or show any expression on his face as he danced around each projectile, while firing bone after bone out of the tips of his fingers in every direction, which tore through dozens of loyalists. Meanwhile, even the kunai and shuriken that hit Kimimaro did nothing, as he made sure they hit his hardened bones instead of any of his soft and vital organs. The rebels were in awe as they watched their reinforcement of 3 Jinan, who were only that in name, literally stop the loyalists dead in their tracks. The loyalists fell back to catch their breath and to come up with a new strategy, and Kimimaro hopped off of his platform. He walked up to the officer in charge of the flank with Haku and Suigetsu at his side. "Now, where's Mei-sama?" he asked. "With Mei." The loyalists were having trouble approaching the center of the rebel formation, with the pools of bubbling lava that dotted the land between them, and the acidic mist that hung above them, obscuring their view, the work of Mei. However, this defensive setup wasn't without cost, as Mei was left terribly exhausted after using so many chakra-heavy jutsu for hours on end. She had pushed herself to her limits, as anywhere she wasn't present seemed to crumble, and forced her to keep moving around to stabilize the areas. As such, after setting up several layers of deadly traps, she retreated to the defensive line set up by Ao and Mangetsu at the back to catch her breath and get a moment of rest. That was where the trio of Naruto's team approached her. "Mei-sama!" Haku called out, as they walked over to her. Mei gave her a soft smile. She always did like Haku. "Good to see you 3 all safe and sound. We could certainly use your help." "Mei-sama, where is Naruto Taiku?" Kimimaro asked. Mei's smile faded into a frown, as her countenance fell. I don't know. He stormed off after. I foolishly accused him of things I shouldn't have." "Mei-sama, we need his help. He always has a plan. Don't you have any idea where he might be?" Haku asked. "We sure could use that big-ass fire attack from earlier. Or a storm of his explosive tags," Suigetsu added. Mei sadly shook her head. She looked around the makeshift triage she was resting at, and looked at all of the injured and dying shinobi around her. They had lost too many men to keep this rebellion going after tonight. There was only one thing left that could salvage this situation, and that was defeating Yagura. However, he was nowhere to be seen. "Damn you, Yagura. Throwing your men into this meat grinder while you stay behind in safety. You coward." Mei cursed Yagura under her breath. "With Yagura." Meanwhile, Yagura sat at one of the empty watchtowers with a spyglass, and looked over the situation. His forces were winning everywhere, and had all of the rebels backed into a convenient corner. Everything was going according to plan. Everything except one thing. That damn Uzumaki mercenary had yet to show up. "Where are you, you damn rat?" Yagura muttered to himself as he looked around the island for any signs of the Uzumaki. He wanted to save his energy for who he perceived to be his most dangerous foe, but he was nowhere to be seen. The rebels are at the brink of defeat, and he's yet to show his face? What game is he playing here? Yagura wondered. "Perhaps you're wiser than I thought." "Yes. That must be it. He knew we were coming and fled alone. He was simply a mercenary after all." Yagura put away his spyglass with a grin on his face. "Well then. I suppose it's time for me to put an end to this little rebellion. I'll let you guys go out with a bang." Back at the battlefield. The battle continued to rage on, and while the rebels were doing a great job of holding off the loyalists for a good while, they were beginning to grow tired and run low on chakra. The loyalists had no such problem. They had always been much more organized than the rebels, and they used their training and system to split their forces into battalions, some of which would attack, while others rested. Even their logistics were better, even though the rebels had the home ground, with efficient supply lines forming behind their defensive lines, distributing weapons, water, medical aid, or even chakra pills to resting shinobi. Meanwhile, the rebels were already low on supplies, but were put in an even worse situation when they lost supplies to the loyalists in the surprise attack. "Mei-sama, we're out of chakra pills," one kunoichi reported to Mei. "Shit. Could things get any worse?" Mei sighed. They desperately needed chakra pills and soldier pills after the hours of exhausting fighting. "Mei-sama," a shinobi shouted out in panic as he ran towards her. "What is it now?" Mangetsu complained to Mei. "Yes? What is it?" Mei asked the shinobi. "Mei-sama. We're in trouble. The loyalists are chanting Yagura's name. I think he's arrived." he reported. Everyone around felt their hearts sink. Well, it looks like things got worse, Mei-sama. Ao commented. Mei didn't have the time to deal with Ao's comment. She had wished Yagura was present so they could somehow salvage the hopeless situation, but now that Yagura actually showed up, she realized she didn't really want to face him right now. I see. All right. It's time for me to get back out there. Thank you for letting me know. Mei replied as she stood back up. Yagura. So we finally meet. The rebels and the loyalists had been clashing and then separating all throughout the night, clashing and separating several times, as the loyalists came in waves, trying different methods. When Mei and Zabuza dragged their exhausted bodies to the front of the rebel lines, they were on one of these breaks in the battle, where both sides faced each other, but stood outside of each other's ranges. They looked towards the loyalist lines, and saw the loyalists chanting Yagura's name, before they split down the middle to open up a path. From that path, a shortish young man appeared, twirling a black staff in his hands. Ah, we meet at last, Mei, the great beauty of Kiri, Yagura said with a smile. Kill him. If we can kill him, this war is over. A rebel officer yelled, and 3 squads followed him as they charged Yagura. Yagura's men were about to go out to defend Yagura, but he simply held up his hand to stop them. I don't need your help for trash like this, he remarked, as he went through several hand seals. Coral release, branching spear jutsu. Several sharp branches of coral grew from his staff, and impaled each of the 12 shinobi that were charging at Yagura, killing them. Yagura smiled and released his jutsu, dropping the dead shinobi on the ground unceremoniously. Mei glared at Yagura, who spat on the closest body to him. Yagura looked up and smiled. Come on. You didn't really think something so pathetic would work on me? Did you? I'm insulted if you thought some trash could beat me. Mei was furious at how he treated her dead shinobi. Yotan, Yoru Dan no Jutsu. Lava release, lava dragon bullet technique, Mei yelled as a dragon made up of bubbling lava erupted out of the ground in front of her. It flew straight at Yagura, who just smirked. Suten, Mai Zukigami no Jutsu. Water release, water mirror technique, he twirled his staff in front of him, forming a round mirror of water in front of him. A lava dragon emerged out of the mirror, and smashed into Mei's dragon, effectively cancelling out the attack, much to Mei's surprise. Yagura chuckled. Come on. Don't tell me that was your strongest attack? I've heard so much about the fearsome beauty that was the rebel leader. I assumed she'd be quite strong from what I've heard, but if this is it, then I'm disappointed. Mei scowled at him. Yagura gave her a smirk. Now. No need to be so angry. All that frowning will give you wrinkles. Besides, I wasn't saying I was disappointed in you. I was disappointed in myself that I let a weakling like you oppose me for so long. Yotan, cannon eruption jutsu, Mei yelled out in fury, and the earth in front of her split open as a huge glob of lava erupted out of it, and shot at Yagura at breakneck speeds. Yagura simply created the water mirror again, and a similarly sized glob of lava shot out of it, colliding with Mei's and cancelling out her jutsu once again. You done? Yagura asked teasingly. Mei was trembling with anger and frustration at Yagura's incessant teasing. The rebels' morale hit rock bottom when they watched their most powerful fighter, their leader, being toyed around with by Yagura. What could they possibly do against a well-rested force more than twice their size, and a perfect Jinchuuriki waiting to annihilate them? Yagura looked over the rebels, and could see the disheartened faces. He grinned. Time to end this rebellion here. There is no chance for any of you to live to see the morning, if you continue to resist. However, I'm a merciful man, despite the propaganda you might have heard from your leader. If you surrender to me, I'll allow you to live. Yagura announced in a loud voice. Murmurs began to break out all over the rebel side. People were debating if they should just give up now and live, or die a dog's death. Mei couldn't help but be concerned at seeing the will of her shinobi shaking. She wished she could say something to give them hope, something to motivate them, but what did she have to offer? Was surrendering the right thing to do? Was there a chance she could save some of her men? Yagura saw the effect his speech had on the rebels, and smirked. However, he wasn't done yet. However, he yelled out, capturing the complete attention of the rebel forces once again, and quieting them instantly. There will be no mercy for bloodline users. I know many of you have been roped into this pointless war by empty promises from bloodline users and their clans, but they are nothing but lies. Remember how Kiri was under their rule. A village, divided between bloodline users as nobles, and the rest of us as nothing more than glorified peasants. Is that what you want to return to? Yagura reasoned, causing fierce debates and suspicions against their comrades to break out on the rebel side. Mei could do nothing as she watched her shinobi slowly turning against each other, and camaraderie crumbling apart. They were minutes away from fighting each other. Make them pay the price for destroying our village. If you turn against your bloodline-wielding comrades, and fight against them on my behalf, I'll pardon you of your treason against Kiri, and allow you and your family to rejoin the village, no questions asked. In fact, I'll reward you for each bloodline-wielding clan member you kill. Yagura smirked after finishing his speech. That should be the nail in the coffin. Hey! Why are you looking at me like that? There's no way you're actually considering what he's saying? We've been fighting together for years. One rebel shinobi said to another standing next to him. You'd prefer if we all die? It's either you get to live or we all have to die? You selfish bastard. I've got a family to think about, and I don't want them to end up as fish food. Similar arguments began to break out all over. Mei looked over at the infighting, and realized the rebellion was basically over. All of the bloodline-wielding clans would be executed, man, woman, and children, whether they displayed the ability or not. As for herself, she hoped she'd simply be executed. The alternative was too insulting and degrading to even consider. She held a kunai with a trembling hand, as she debated if she should slit her own throat right now. The sound of arguing and infighting was interrupted by shouts from the loyalist side. Halt! Who are you? Stay right there! A loyalist yelled. Katen, Hosenka no Jutsu. Fire release, Phoenix Sage Flower Technique, a voice yelled out. Hundreds of large balls of fire arced over the battlefield, and fell upon the loyalist army. Though some of the more skilled Suiten users were able to extinguish some of the fireballs, many were killed by the intense blue flames, which burned the places they hit into ashes. Even the extinguished fireballs dropped the sharp shuriken hidden inside them onto the loyalist forces, injuring many and even killing some of them. Yagura looked behind him, and scowled. Who dares attack my army? Katen, Ryuka no Jutsu. Fire release, Dragon Flame Technique, the voice called out next. Intense streams of extremely hot blue fire traveled down the ninja wires that had been attached to the many shuriken which were scattered amongst the loyalist formation. They were unable to do a thing to extinguish the quickly traveling streams of fire, as the fire evaporated the water jutsu that were cast on it in an attempt to extinguish it, as long as the figure maintained the flow of chakra. The streams of fire consumed the unlucky loyalists that were standing near the ninja wires, opening several paths of charred corpses in their lines. Hey, looks like your combo works pretty well, Sasuke. The approaching figure whispered to himself. Yagura was shocked at how powerful these blue flames were. He had seen plenty of fire jutsu in his life, but he had never seen fire like this, which would overpower water jutsu, as if fire was strong against water, instead of it being the other way around. No. This can't be. Is this what Jinpachi was talking about? The approaching figure with the Hunter Nin mask held up a single hand seal, and suddenly, he was joined by 20 shadow clones, who drew their swords and channeled razor-sharp wind chakra through the blade. The clones charged into the gaps created by the dragon flame jutsu, and began to slash around rapidly, a body dropping to the floor with each motion of the clones. The loyalists only recovered from their shock when over 100 men had been sliced to pieces in seconds, each clone easily killing more than 5 people each. The loyalists around the clones began to close in on the clones, hoping to overwhelm them with numbers. The figure smiled under his mask. Futten, Bunshine Daibakua. Boil release, clone great explosion. The surrounded clones began to distort in shape, before the pressurized acidic steam inside them exploded out in a massive explosion. Each one took out dozens, killing several hundred more in an agonizing death, as their terrified comrades watched them dissolve slowly and painfully. The screams of pain from the dissolving loyalists gripped the hearts of each loyalist with icy fingers of fear. Boil release? Mei whispered to herself in surprise as she watched complete pandemonium break out in the ranks of the loyalists with the arrival of the masked figure. The figure jumped and landed in between the loyalists and the rebels. Yagura gritted his teeth as he glared at the new arrival. So, you finally arrive. The rebels were silent as they stared in awe at the familiar newly arrived figure, who was wearing a blue cloak with an orange Uzumaki spiral on his back that they hadn't seen before. Look! It's the Blue Dragon. We're saved. Chapter 36, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 7. At the battlefield. Naruto Taiku. Suigetsu and Haku yelled out in relief, when they saw the spiky blonde hair of their captain. Naruto. You're finally here, Mei whispered with a soft smile on her face. Sorry for keeping you waiting. I got here as soon as I found out we were under attack. Naruto replied. Yagura got over his surprise and anger, with a smile forming on his face. So, it seems I was wrong. The Uzumaki mercenary didn't run away. I finally get to meet you, the elusive phantom of illusions. Hey, you sure suck at coming up with nicknames, don't you? Naruto said with a smirk, though nobody could see it, as his face was hidden by his Kiri Hunter Nin mask. He turned around to look at the rebels behind him. They were all in terrible shape, and barely half of the number of shinobi that were on the island the day before were present now. Naruto gritted his teeth. Mei's words rang in his mind. If only he had been closer, he could have prevented many of them from dying. He turned back to glare at the army facing him. I'll make you guys pay for what you've done. He growled out in an ominous tone. Yagura smirked. Oh? Will you now? He asked sarcastically. The loyalist shinobi behind Yagura began to retreat further behind, in order to get as far away from Naruto as possible, and also away from their angry leader, who could be quite destructive when angered. The rebels began to do the same. It was clear that a showdown between these two juggernauts was imminent, and they did not want to be caught in the crossfire. It was clear their participation would do next to nothing on the outcome of the fight, and they wanted to stay safe. Besides, this was going to be a fight for the ages. They wanted to be able to watch in relative safety. Only Mei stayed where she stood, before she approached Naruto. Naruto-kun. Mei. I'm sorry I was so late. You were right. I should have done more. Naruto began to say. However, Mei cut him off. No. You were right. I know it's not easy watching people you care about get hurt, but you knew it was something we needed for ourselves. It was wrong of me to accuse you of not caring. I shouldn't have said all of those things to you earlier. I'm so sorry. She stood beside him, intending to help him fight Yagura. Naruto noticed the terrible state Mei was in, and put a hand on her shoulder. We both have our roles to play in this war, and right now, I'm the only one who is in the condition to take on Yagura. So, you want me to sit back and do nothing, like a damsel in distress waiting for her savior? Mei asked angrily. Naruto chuckled. Of course not. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can beat him by myself either. But what's true is that I have more chakra than you right now, and less beat up. I'll see what he's capable of, and if he's too strong for me to handle alone, I'll try to create an opening for you, and you can strike then. Until then, stand back and let me do the fighting, and try to recover a bit if you can, okay? Mei couldn't argue with that, seeing that she was nearly completely out of chakra. She was barely standing on her feet as she was. She reluctantly nodded. You done talking to your girlfriend? Yagura asked, annoyed at having to wait. He wanted to have his epic showdown with a worthy adversary, unhindered and undisturbed. Naruto didn't say anything, but turned to face his enemy. His muscles were tense. He hadn't fought anyone on the caliber of a perfect Jinchuuriki before. Good. Get ready to fight for your life, Uzumaki, Yagura shouted out, as coral began to sprout around him as he twirled his staff. Naruto-kun, Mei whispered before she got close to Naruto. He turned to face her, about to tell her get back to her troops, but Mei surprised him with her actions. She lifted his mask and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Naruto turned to her in shock. For good luck. Come back to us safely, Mei whispered in his ear as she gave him a coy smile that he wasn't used to seeing on her face, before putting the mask back on his face and heading back to her troops. Naruto was glad he had his mask on, because his face was as red as Narumi's hair. He shook his head, and focused on the fight once again. Come at me. Yagura challenged with a confident smirk on his face. Naruto didn't say anything, but he drew his Kiri Onbu sword from his sheath. He then blurred out a view. Yagura didn't move from where he was standing, calmly weaving through hand signs rapidly. Naruto struck from behind, sword aimed at Yagura's neck. Yagura didn't even turn to face Naruto, as coral growing from his neck stopped the attack, and began to grow around the sword. Naruto increased the amount of wind chakra he channeled through the blade and quickly pulled it out before the coral could encompass it totally. He jumped back and examined his sword. Damn! That coral is some tough stuff. Naruto thought, as he looked over a chip in the blade of hardened and tempered steel. It looked like this fight wouldn't be so simple. Naruto had to jump back when Yagura thrust at him with his staff with enough force to pierce through flesh if it hit. Luckily for Naruto, it didn't land. Quite the fast one, aren't you? Yagura asked with a grin. Luckily for me, I'm used to dealing with you fast ones. Naruto didn't know what Yagura had up his sleeve, but knew to keep his senses sharp, and to be prepared for anything. Naruto formed 3 clones, and proceeded to surround Yagura, before all charged at him simultaneously with their swords ready to strike Yagura at different areas. Yagura smirked and simply allowed a thick layer of coral form around him, until he resembled a coral statue. When Naruto's wind chakra enhanced sword struck the coral, Naruto was surprised to see his swords barely able to penetrate further than a couple centimeters. Sharp branches of coral shot out of the armor of coral, catching the 4 Narutos by surprise when they pierced through their chests. Coral around Yagura's face receded to reveal a smirking Yagura. "Didn't expect me to be able to fight from this position, did you?" His smile fell off of his face, when the clones disappeared with a puff of smoke, and a log pierced by Yagura's coral was in the place where the original Naruto once was. A short distance away, Naruto looked over his sword. That was enough wind chakra to cut through solid rock. How tough is that coral? He thought to himself, as he examined deep cracks spreading through the sword, branching out from the initial chip. He tossed the now useless sword aside. It appeared that using swords against Yagura was a losing strategy. "Like my coral? It's almost as tough as steel. I'd say it's the ultimate defense," Yagura boasted as he stepped out of his coral armor. Naruto formed another clone, who ran at Yagura with his fists drawn back for a haymaker. "Really? You think your fists are stronger than your sword?" Yagura taunted as coral began to surround him again. "Futten, Kyuubi Muso. Boil release, unrivaled strength," the clone yelled out as it dodged the sharp branches of coral that shot out of the armor. Despite being rooted to the ground by the coral armor, Yagura was surprised when he was sent skidding back, creating a deep ditch in the ground, when the clone landed its punch. However, besides for a few pieces of coral chipping off, most of it was intact. However, the clone wasn't quite done yet. "Futten, Bunshine Daibakua. Boil release, clone great explosion," Naruto called out, and the clone proceeded to hug the coral armor and explode, releasing the pressurized acid. Even at point-blank range, the coral wasn't completely destroyed. A few cracks began to form around Yagura's coral armor, but it was still intact. It only fell apart when Yagura emerged from his shell, seemingly unharmed on the outside. However, it was clear that he had taken some damage, when he spat out blood. The shockwave from the explosion had penetrated through the shell to do some internal damage. "Hey, looks like I got complacent with my coral armor. Note to self, don't let his clones get that close to me," Yagura said with a smirk. He wasn't too worried about the damage anyway. He'd be able to recover from it before this fight was even over. Naruto gritted his teeth as he watched Yagura basically shake off an explosion that would have destroyed a small house. It looked like he'd need to bring out something bigger. Naruto began to go through his options now that Kenjutsu, the staple of his fighting repertoire, was out of the picture. He was definitely Jonin level in his taijutsu, but it honestly wasn't his strongest suit, and he doubted it would be of much use in this battle. Even as he was fighting a battle of life and death, he smiled under his mask when he recalled the first fight he had with Kakashi. Itachi had been by his side at the time. Lesson 2, Ninjutsu. Naruto recalled to himself. Kaden, Goryuka no Jutsu. Fire release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Naruto spat out a giant blue ball of fire that was shaped like a dragon's head. It scorched the ground as it flew towards Yagura, attesting to how hot the fires were. However, when Yagura twirled his staff around to make a mirror of water, a similar ball of fire emerged from the mirror, and collided with Naruto's, forming a giant explosion of flame that forced both combatants to jump backwards to avoid being caught in the blast radius. Within a 50-meter circle, everything was scorched black. "Phew. That's quite the fire attack you've got there, Uzumaki," Yagura shouted out with a grin. "Naruto-kun. Watch out. He's able to repel any of your ninjutsu by casting that mirror. It's able to copy your own attack and send it back to you," Mei called out. Naruto nodded in thanks to that bit of information. He began to analyze and compile the info he had gotten on Yagura so far. So, he's got quite the defense, both for physical attacks, and for ninjutsu. He prefers to fight statically, taking advantage of his powerful defense, and strikes out opportunistically when he sees an opening. Naruto supposed. Turtles up in his defense, and then strikes out suddenly, huh? Just like a snapping turtle. I guess I'll have to give him something to bite on too, before I strike his neck, huh? Naruto concluded. Realize you can't touch me? Yagura taunted. Well, if you're not coming for me, I'll come for you. He smashed his staff into the ground, and sharp corals began to rapidly sprout from the ground, creating a jagged trail of coral that stretched towards Naruto. Naruto ran to the side to dodge it, but the growth of corals followed him. He jumped into the air in an attempt to get away from the corals, but the coral began to grow upwards, threatening to stab him. He created a clone mid-air, and the clone threw him towards Yagura, before it dispelled in a puff of smoke when it was pierced by the coral. Katen, Hosenka Tsumabeni. Fire release, Phoenix Sage Flower Nail Crimson. Naruto threw a wide volley of shuriken at Yagura, simultaneously blowing his blue flames onto the shuriken. Yagura drew a circle in front of him with his staff once again, creating a mirror of water which shot out blazing shuriken and knocked down Naruto's own. However, Naruto noticed the mirror only shot down the shuriken that were directly in front of it. The shuriken that landed harmlessly next to Yagura were untouched. So, the mirror can only block techniques that come from the front. Naruto realized, as he landed and rolled away from Yagura. Damn! I couldn't land a single hit, Naruto said out loud, in an effort to mask the fact that he figured out Yagura's technique. The shinobi on the rebel side began to grow concerned at hearing this and seeing Naruto struggle against Yagura, while the shinobi on the loyalist side began to grow confident in their victory. Naruto-sama, Haku whispered to herself in concern, as she watched the fight. Don't worry about Naruto, Haku. If anyone can handle Yagura, it's him. Zabuza told her in an effort to comfort her. Mei watched Naruto fight against Yagura with a concerned look, before she was distracted by someone calling her. Yes, what is it? She asked as she turned to the voice. Kimimaro said nothing as he stuck out his arm. It appeared he was holding something in his hand. You look like you could use this, Mei-sama. Kimimaro told Mei, when she looked at him in confusion. It was clear to him that she was close to collapsing from chakra exhaustion. It's a chakra pill. I carry several for emergencies, due to my condition. Here, take it. Mei looked at the pill in Kimimaro's hand in silence for a couple seconds, before she gave him a warm smile. Thank you, Kimimaro-kun. Meanwhile, back at the fight, Naruto yelled out Katen, Fire Hydra Jutsu, as he completed a complex chain of hand seals. He then exhaled a massive dragon made of blue fire at Yagura. Yagura rolled his eyes at the similar pattern of attack. Was the Uzumaki stupid? Didn't he learn that this wouldn't work on him yet? He cast his Mizukigami no Jutsu, water mirror technique, again. A similar dragon of fire shot out of the mirror, and collided with the dragon Naruto had made. However, when the two dragons collided, two more dragons shot out of either side of Naruto's dragon of fire, and circled around the mirror to fly towards either side of Yagura. Shit, Yagura yelled out as he quickly formed a thick armor of coral around him to protect himself from the surprise attack. When the fire cleared out, Yagura's armor of coral stood standing, relatively unharmed. However, the coral on the sides had been bleached bone white. Immediately after casting the Fire Hydra Jutsu, Naruto immediately followed through by creating 4 shadow clones to attack Yagura from each side with a steam power boosted puncher kick. Once again, Yagura stayed in his bastion of tough coral, allowing his sharp branches of coral to attack while he stayed safe. The clones coming from the front and from the back were pierced and puffed out of existence. However, Naruto noticed that Yagura was unable to grow coral from the bleached corals. When the clones coming from the left and right landed their hits, the white coral shattered, and Yagura was sent flying a short distance away. So, fire kills the coral, preventing it from growing, and renders it brittle. Naruto realized. Yagura picked himself off the ground, and dusted his clothes. Hey, not bad, Uzumaki. I'd have been disappointed if you were any weaker, like our dear friend Mei over there, Yagura said with a smirk. Mei glared at Yagura as she gritted her teeth. How dare he accuse her of being weak when he waited until she was nearly collapsing from the lack of chakra before he struck. That coward. Coral release, Polyp Bullet Jutsu, Yagura yelled out after a chain of hand seals, and proceeded to spit out several pink bullets at Naruto. The rebels gasped when they heard several dull thuds hit Naruto, and Naruto fell on his back. Yagura's smirk faded, when once again, a puff of smoke revealed a log with several pink bullets embedded in it. Naruto looked at the log in surprise, a short distance away, when coral began to grow from the bullets, quickly encompassing the entire log. Shit, if I didn't Kawari me out of there in time, I would have been trapped. Naruto thought to himself. Quite the slippery eel you are. Yagura commented. You run away exceedingly well, just like these rebel cockroaches. Naruto grinned at Yagura's taunt, unfazed. He had seen enough of what Yagura was capable of to come up with a plan. He unsealed kunai with a tag attached to it, and threw it at Yagura. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kunai Shadow Clone Technique. The single kunai multiplied into hundreds, and flew at Yagura. Explosive tags? Let's see how they stack up against this, Yagura said to himself as he prepared for another jutsu. When Yagura called out Coral Release, Barrier Reef Bastion, vast amounts of coral quickly rose out of the ground and formed a giant semicircle with a 10-meter radius around him. The hail of kunai hit the wall of coral, but were unable to penetrate the tough material. They all fell to the ground. Did you really think some kunai would cut it? Yagura wondered out loud, before Naruto formed a single hand seal. Kai. The tags on the kunai all went off at once. A thick black smoke exploded out of the tags, covering Yagura's field of vision. They were just decoys. Katen, hunting pack of the underworld jutsu. Yagura tried to clear the smoke away by using the Suijinheki jutsu, water encampment wall technique. He was surprised when he saw several massive dogs made of fire jump over the wall of coral, and heading straight for him. Suten, Mai Zukigami no Jutsu. Water release, water mirror technique. Several similar hounds leapt out of the mirror and crashed into the flaming dogs, causing several small explosions of fire, when the jutsu cancelled each other out. Yagura had thought he was in the clear, when several flaming dogs leapt out of the smoke behind him, and from either side. Coral release, coral armor jutsu. Yagura quickly covered himself in a thick layer of coral to shield himself. The dogs crashed into Yagura from all sides, causing explosions of blue fire when they crashed into him. The flames died down to reveal Yagura completely encompassed in a thick layer of bone-white coral. Shit. That was close. He almost got me with that one. Yagura thought to himself in relief. However, Naruto wasn't done. That last move had merely been the setup. Naruto jumped off of the wall of coral, to gain an incredible amount of airtime with a steam-boosted jump. Futten, Kairiki Muso. Boil release, unrivaled strength, Naruto cried out, bringing a steaming fist down onto the white coral surrounding Yagura. The powerful punch shattered the brittle bleached coral, and created a massive crater in the ground, with Yagura lying in the middle. The loyalists gasped as they saw their leader lying motionless in the ground. They were speechless and in shock, seeing their undefeated leader lying in a crater that no one would believe was created by a single punch. The rebels, on the other hand, were cheering. The man that had been tormenting them for years was finally down. That son of a bitch. He actually did it. Zabuza commented as he smiled. However, Ao watched the scene with a grim face. The Byakugan under his eye patch was showing him things that others couldn't see. No. He's not done yet. Mei turned to look at Ao, before she turned to look at Yagura's prone form again, staring with a worried look. Naruto watched Yagura's body from the edge of the crater, observing to see if there was even the slightest movement coming from him. He wouldn't let his guard down yet. When he saw Yagura twitching, he flew at Yagura with a kunai. He would make sure he was dead before he celebrated. Yagura rolled over just in time to avoid having a kunai go through the back of his skull. However, Naruto's kunai still pierced through his left shoulder. Naruto was shocked when Yagura grabbed the hand holding the kunai with his right hand, preventing Naruto from pulling the kunai out. Yagura unnerved Naruto when he began to laugh out loud. Naruto tried pulling his arm back with all of his strength, but Yagura's grip was surprisingly strong, unmoving with his vice-like grip. He then tried to force Yagura to let go, by channeling wind chakra through the kunai to inflict even more pain, but Yagura just tanked it, and Naruto was unable to move his hand enough to do more damage, due to the powerful hold Yagura had on Naruto's hand. You're strong. Really strong. No one has ever pushed me so far before. It's time I reward you for your power and skill in battle, Yagura shouted out with a hint of madness seeping into his voice. A cloak of dark red chakra began to envelop him, taking the form of a humanoid, spiky, three-tailed turtle. Yagura drew back his arm, and punched Naruto in the mask. Naruto flew back, creating a deep crack in the wall of the crater when he smashed into it. The tough, resilient mask on his face shattered, revealing blood trickling down Naruto's face from a cut on his forehead, and from his busted lips. Yagura didn't give him any chance to recover. He blurred out of view, rocketing into Naruto with a devastating uppercut that sent Naruto tearing through the wall of the crater, and sent him flying into the air. He landed on the ground on his back, bouncing a couple times. Yagura jumped out of the crater and landed a short distance away from him. Mei, and the rest of the rebels with her, began to pale. This was it. Nobody saw the chakra cloak of the three-tailed Baijuo and lived. Naruto spat out blood as he picked himself up. If he hadn't reinforced his entire body with chakra in time, he would have been a bloody splatter on the ground. That bastard. He punches harder than Tsunade. He looked at his right wrist when he felt a sharp pain from it, and saw that the skin around his wrist had been burned off from the corrosive chakra from the Baijuu chakra surrounding Yagura. So, this is what it's like facing a Baijuu. He thought to himself. Naruto didn't have much time to think anything else, as he had to kawarimi away from Yagura's blazing quick punch that was aimed at his head. The log that had taken his place exploded into thousands of wood chips no bigger than toothpicks when Yagura's punch landed on it. Naruto's head was still spinning from the punches he took from Yagura, but he knew he had to stay focused, or he'd be dead in a split second. Shit. His whole fighting style has changed. He doesn't use jutsu anymore, but he's so much faster and stronger than before. I'm struggling to keep up. And that chakra surrounding him. It's corrosive. I can't touch him without hurting myself. Mei and the rebels watched with trepidation, as they watched their champion on the back foot for the first time, using all of his concentration to dodge Yagura's rapid strikes, not given any time to form hand seals for jutsu. If this keeps up, I'm bound to slip up eventually. One hit. And I'm a goner. Naruto mused. He's not giving me any time to use jutsu, and I can't use taijutsu against him right now. Though Yagura swung rapidly, his attacks were still focused on Naruto. He wasn't planning on giving Naruto even the slightest second to even breathe. It appeared to everyone that Naruto had his hands tied, unable to fight back. I really didn't want to have to reveal this, but it looks like I have no choice. Naruto surprised Yagura by letting a punch slip by his face, and driving a blue ball of tightly compressed and rapidly rotating chakra into his ribs. Rasengan. Yagura was sent flying, and created a deep trench as he skidded across the ground. The battlefield went silent when Naruto sent Yagura flying. The silence was broken when one of the older shinobi present on the battlefield shouted in shock. That's the Yondaime Hokage's jutsu. Everyone's eyes fell upon Naruto, and their jaws dropped when they saw ice-cold blue eyes that were calm yet calculating, and the blood-crusted blonde hair on his head. It's the yellow flash. Those simple words sent a chill crawling up the loyalists' spines, and some of them began to discreetly back away from the battlefield. Some of them had seen him in action firsthand, and knew they were lucky to be alive now. The rebels were also in shock when Naruto's face was revealed to many of them for the first time. Murmurs began to break out. What's the Yondaime Hokage doing here? You idiot. The Yondaime Hokage is dead. How could he be here? Is it his son? Does that mean Konoha is involved? Why would they only send him then? Mei watched in silence as she listened to her men wonder what was going on. Meanwhile, Yagura threw the rubble covering him off of his body, and looked at Naruto in fury. He roared as he charged towards Naruto with his fists drawn back for another haymaker. Naruto was able to easily dodge his attack, now that his fury had driven him into a berserker rage, and his attacks were sloppier. He punished Yagura for each sloppy attack by driving a Rasengan into his stomach, his back, and any other exposed part on his body. After taking a Rasengan to the face which sent him flying back, Yagura picked himself up once again. Fuck it. I'm going to make sure they never even find a shred of your body. Yagura screamed out in a deep voice that wasn't completely his. Everyone watched in silence, as the dark red chakra that surrounded Yagura began to grow and expand, until it quickly turned into its final form. The Sanbi, Mei whispered out despondently. This was the worst-case scenario. Yagura, or the Sanbi as it appeared to be now, roared a mighty roar which created shockwaves that sent debris flying in all directions. Naruto stayed rooted to where he stood, as he wordlessly observed the massive beast in front of him. His mind was in chaos as he tried to come up with a strategy to defeat the Sanbi. Yagura spoke in the Sanbi's deep, booming voice. Now that you've shown me your attacks, why don't I show you one of mine? Chakra began to gather and condense into a single black ball of chakra in front of Yagura's mouth in his Baijuu chakra cloak form. It's Yagura's Baijuu Dama. Tailed beast ball, a rebel officer yelled out in terror. Naruto drew a three-pronged kunai, and prepared himself to dodge Yagura's most powerful attack. Yagura surprised Naruto when he turned to face the rebel army instead. The rebels could do nothing but watch as Yagura finally fired the black ball of condensed chakra at them. The force of the approaching ball of doom blew wind in their direction, blowing the hair and clothes of the rebels towards the back. Mei's hair also was blown back, revealing her eyes full of anger and also fear, as her life flashed before her eyes. Kushios, Sanju Rashomon. Summoning, triple Rashomon, a voice rang out in the air, as 3 demonic-looking gates erupted from the ground in between the rebels and the Baiju Dama. The deadly ball of chakra smashed through the first gate, busted open the second gate, but was stopped by the third gate, which dissipated all of the force behind the exploding ball of chakra. What? Yagura shouted out in surprise. How had he been able to stop this attack, which was strong enough to destroy an entire small village? He turned his gaze to see the man who had summoned the defensive structure. Naruto panted as he lifted his hands from the ground. He had barely been able to pull that off in time to save the rebels. "Your fight is with me, Yagura," Naruto shouted. He had to jump out of the way, when the ground he was standing on was destroyed by the spiky tail of the Sanbi that was swung at him. "Futten, Kairiki Muso. Boil release, unrivaled strength," Naruto yelled out as steam began to emanate from his body. He picked up a house-sized chunk of earth that had been created in the fight between him and Yagura, and threw it at the massive form of Yagura. Yagura didn't even try to dodge the massive boulder that was sent flying at him. He tanked the projectile, which hit his spiky shell, and disintegrated into tiny rocks, doing next to no damage to Yagura. Looks like physical attacks don't seem to do much, Naruto said to himself, as he prepared for his next jutsu. He was forced to stop his jutsu midway, when Yagura in his Sanbi form, surprised Naruto by rolling up into a ball and rolling at him much faster than his giant size suggested. That was close. That was like the Akimichi Nikudan Sensha. Human bullet tank, Naruto remarked to himself as he threw himself, with a chakra-boosted jump, to the side to avoid being flattened. He stood up and quickly rushed through hand signs to form his next jutsu, before Yagura could turn his massive body around and come at him again. Futten, Acid Dragon Jutsu. Naruto launched a dragon formed of hot, compressed acidic vapors, which flew towards Yagura. Once again, Yagura blocked it with his shell, but the dragon exploded on contact, releasing the hot, acidic vapors. Yagura roared in pain, as the acidic mist slowly dissolved part of his shell. Yagura spat a torrent of water into the air, which fell on himself, and washed the acid away. He then turned to glare at Naruto, and released his own jutsu at him. Suten, Suadana. Water release, water severing wave. Yagura spat out a high-pressure stream of water, that cut cleanly through several chunks of earth and through the rock which was behind where Naruto was standing, before Naruto jumped away to avoid being hit. So, he can still use jutsu in this form? Damn. How am I supposed to defeat him? Naruto thought to himself. I'm going to need some backup. Kushios no Jutsu. Summoning technique. You summon me, Naruto-sama? Naruto's giant clam summon asked as it revealed itself after the smoke from the summoning dispersed. Yeah, I need your help defeating Yagura and the Sanbi. Naruto told Shinkiro. The Sanbi? I am not powerful enough to fight against one of the Baiju, Naruto-sama. The clam responded telepathically. Just create some openings for me, so I can attack him. I shall create some illusions of you and hide your presence to help you. Naruto nodded. I'm also going to need you to prepare me for that thing we discussed before. Surely you don't mean that? You know the drawbacks. We haven't figured out the kinks yet. Shinkiro asked in shock. Does it look like we have any better options? If I don't, then we're all going to die. Screw the drawbacks. Naruto told Shinkiro resolutely. Very well. I shall do as you ask. Give me a couple minutes to prepare then. Naruto nodded. When the giant clam emanated the mirage-inducing vapor from its siphon, Naruto and the clam vanished from the view of everyone present. Where did he go? One rebel shinobi vocalized the question that was in everyone's minds. Yagura too looked around, trying to locate Naruto. Odama Rasengan. Big Ball Rasengan, several voices yelled out all around Yagura. Yagura howled in pain, as dozens of extra-large Rasengans drilled into his body from all directions. He swung his tails as he thrashed around, dispelling many of Naruto's clones who were attacking him. Where the hell are you? Yagura yelled as he fired jet after jet of water at illusions of Naruto, while Naruto's clones attacked him from the openings he left. How much longer, Shin? Naruto asked Shinkiro as he created and sent clone after clone at Yagura. He needed his summon to hurry up with the preparations as his chakra was quickly diminishing. Just a little bit more. The clam answered back. I'll need your help with buying some time then, Shinkiro. Naruto relayed to the giant clam. Got it. Mud release, slip river. The clam pointed its siphon at Yagura and sprayed a thick stream of clay that covered his entire body. Kaden, Goka Mesitsu. Fire release, great fire destruction, Naruto called out next, before he inhaled, and then proceeded to exhale a massive stream of blue fire, that completely engulfed the entire form of the Sanbi. Yagura howled in pain in the deep booming voice of the Sanbi, as the extremely hot fire burned its tough hide, and made it tough to breathe by burning up all of the oxygen around it. The spectating shinobi around the two combatants were absolutely stunned to witness a fight of this caliber. The blue stream of fire that Naruto had used was so intense, that they had to turn away to protect their eyes. What is this? Is this really a fight between two people? Rebels and loyalists alike wondered. The clay covering Yagura quickly dried up, before the intense heat began to fire the clay into a ceramic prison that bound Yagura's movement. Naruto cut off the flow of chakra to the extremely chakra-intensive jutsu, and fell to one knee, exhausted. He looked up to see if his plan had worked. When the fire and the smoke died down, Yagura's Sanbi form was revealed once again, standing upon a huge patch of scorched earth, where everything was covered in a blackened char. Even the muddy ground he was standing on had been baked into a brick-like material, and Yagura himself was bound in an extremely tough, stoneware body prison, that completely restricted his movement. For a moment, the rebels thought they had a breakthrough. Yagura was bound. It seemed like victory was imminent, when cracks began to rapidly spread throughout the ceramic shell binding Yagura. "You insignificant ant! How dare you!" Yagura bellowed, as the ceramic prison around him exploded into pieces as Yagura twisted and flexed his massive body. "Crap! I guess it won't be that simple, huh?" Naruto commented as he panted. "Naruto-sama. The preparation is complete." Shinchuriki finally reported, opening up its shell. "I'm done with trying to find you. I'll just destroy this whole island with you," Yagura yelled, as he prepared to use the Baiju Dama on the rebel forces once again. Naruto grabbed the shining pearl the size of a blueberry sitting on Shinchuriko's tongue, and quickly swallowed it. Here goes nothing. Meanwhile, Yagura had finished charging the Baiju Dama, this time larger than before, and aimed it at the rebels. "Baiju Dama! Kushios, Sanju Rashomon!" Naruto called out, this time raising 3 demonic gates at an angle, which failed to completely block the massive ball of destruction this time, but was able to redirect it away from the rebels. The massive ball of chakra struck a hill on the outer edges of the island, and completely destroyed that part of the island, attesting to the power of the Baiju Dama. The elusive mist began to clear, revealing Naruto to everyone. Yagura immediately fired another blast of high-pressure water at Naruto, intending to punch a hole right through him. Senpo, bivalve barrier jutsu. However, that plan was foiled when Naruto summoned a thick clam shell as a wall to protect himself. The curved shape of the shell turned the beam of water into a massive spray of water around Naruto, similar to how a spoon might do the same when put under a stream of water under a running tap. "What the? Why does he look so different?" The shinobi watching him wondered out loud, when the mist around Naruto from Yagura's attack receded. When Naruto opened his eyes, his blue irises were replaced by the whitish, iridescent color of a pearl, and necklace of pearls graced his neck like a monk's beaded necklace. Grayish-blue lines formed below his eyes, reminiscent of kabuki paint. A coat similar to the one worn by the second Mizukage was draped on his shoulders. "Just remember, we clams do not have a tradition of sages, meaning we never taught our summoners to use nature chakra. These pearls of concentrated nature chakra will just give you a temporary boost of nature chakra, which will allow you to use sage jutsu for a little bit, but will come with its drawbacks when you run out," Shinchuriki warned Naruto. "That's fine, I'll only need it for a little bit anyway. Let's see how many times you can summon your annoying gates," Yagura yelled as he prepared the Baiju Dama again. "Enough. Senpo Kushios, Myojinmon. Sage art summoning, gate of the great god," Naruto shouted out. Yagura was about to fire off his Baiju Dama, when several interlocking wooden torii gates fell from the sky, and pinned him down by the neck, arms, legs, and tails. The chakra gathered for the Baiju Dama fizzled away as the torii gates began to suppress Yagura's Baiju chakra. What is this? What have you done to me? Let me go," Yagura bellowed out as he thrashed about in an effort to free himself. No matter how hard he tried, he could not seem to free himself. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, he was trapped and unable to move, helpless, just like he had been when he was a child. Flashback. Yagura's childhood. "No. Please. I don't want this," an 8-year-old Yagura begged as he was being strapped down to a medical cot. "Shut up. You asked for this," a fierce-looking Yuki clansman hissed as he tried to strap down his legs. This isn't what I meant. I don't want to become a demon. Yagura screamed. Struggling as if he were fighting for his life, Yagura kicked the Yuki clansman in the eye, and knocked him to the floor, and shook off the others and tried to run away. He was quickly caught when ice began to grow around his ankles, trapping him in place. You damn brat. I'll make you pay for that. The short-tempered Yuki clansman growled as he wiped the blood seeping from the cut on his left eyebrow. He walked up to the trapped Yagura, and punched him in the stomach with all of his strength. Unable to even fall, Yagura was beaten to a pulp. Rooted to the ground, he stood on by a shackle of ice. Once Yagura was barely conscious, they began to strap him down again. When Yagura felt the straps on his body again, he began to fight back with a second wind. However, it was a little too late. The shinobi were able to strap him down in time. You want to play rough, little boy? Why don't I teach you a little lesson you never forget? The Yuki clansman said with cruel smile that Yagura would never forget. The man formed a thin scalpel of ice and brought it close to Yagura's face. Yagura's eyes were wide with fear, and tears fell from his eyes. Please. Don't hurt me anymore. I promise I'll behave. It's much too late for apologies, little boy. I'll teach you the concept of an eye for an eye. The other shinobi around the two didn't stop the Yuki clansman. They merely watched with snickers at seeing the terrified boy. The cruelty they experienced growing up in the bloody mist had desensitized them to such things, and they had little empathy for others. I'm gonna leave you a little gift you'll see every time you look in the mirror. The Yuki clansman began to cut into Yagura's face, intending to flay the skin off of his face near his eyes, starting with the cut below his left eye. Yagura screamed and thrashed around with all of his strength, but was unable to stop the cruel man from cutting a deep cut under his eyes. That's enough. A rough voice boomed. Mizukage-sama. The shinobi present saluted, stopping what they were doing. The third Mizukage walked over to the bleeding boy on the table. So, you're the boy they said wanted a bloodline. Please, Sandaime-sama. I didn't know they wanted to turn me into a demon. Please. Let me go. Yagura begged. The Sandaime shook his head. Unfortunately, I can't do that. My scientists and seal masters have revealed that you are one of the rare people who are able to contain the Sanbi. After losing the Nidaime, our most powerful shinobi, we'll need all of the weapons we can get. Be proud you'll be serving our village by becoming its weapon. Yagura's eyes widened when he realized there was no way for him to get out of this now. This was sanctioned by the Sandaime Mizukage. Now why don't you try to relax? It will end much faster that way. The third Mizukage told Yagura, before he nodded to his men, telling them to proceed. Weeks later, Yagura sat at the edge of a pond, throwing stones into the water. Ever since word got out that he was the new Jinchuuriki of the Sanbi, all of his friends stopped associating with him. His world had been turned upside down ever since the sealing. He had been a naive child, looking up to shinobi like the others in his age, thinking them to be the coolest thing around. Bloodline users in particular, were especially respected. The Sandaime's military doctrine revolved around building up the number of bloodline users to bolster his forces, and he gave them special treatment. As such, they were exempt from the barbaric practice of academy student death matches, and were treated as nobility. Yagura had revered them for their powers as well, but after suffering at their hands, came to realize they were corrupt. He realized just how unfair the system in Kiri was. Especially towards him. He wasn't even really seen as a human anymore, just a weapon. Just like most parents don't want their children playing with explosives, they didn't want their kids playing with Yagura. The sadistic shinobi of Kiri didn't care about his well-being, and only focused on his training, which was brutal. I wish I never opened my stupid mouth about wishing I had a bloodline, Yagura mumbled to himself as he threw another stone into the water. And why is that? An unfamiliar voice asked, making Yagura jump up in surprise. Who are you? Yagura asked in surprise, seeing a strange man with a mask on his face and a hooded cloak over his body. Nobody important. A forgotten boy from the past, I suppose. The masked man replied. What do you want? Yagura asked the strange man suspiciously. He had learnt not to trust people after the sealing. I'd like to ask you the same. What do you want? The man in the mask asked back. He didn't know why he felt compelled to answer, or why he felt like he could trust the man, but he did, and so he began to speak. Meanwhile, unseen to Yagura, a pair of Sharingan were spinning behind the mask of the stranger. Well, I wish things were different around here. I wish people could be all treated equally. It's not fair that some people get to be considered better than others, just because they were born into a certain family that gives them special powers. And it's not fair that I get treated like scum just because they forced the Sanbi inside me. I'm still the same Yagura, but people just see me as the Sanbi now. It's not like I wanted this either. They tricked me. Why do I have to be the one who suffers for that? It's not fair, Yagura yelled, as he got more and more emotional as he spoke. You're right. The world isn't fair. The masked man replied. So, what are you going to do about it? Yagura stopped and thought for a second. What could he do? What can I do? I'm just a little kid. A little kid who has a demon inside me. No one cares what I think, and it's not like I can change anything by myself. The masked man shook his head. You're wrong. You can change the world, even by yourself. Yagura raised an eyebrow. How? Power. The masked man replied. You need power. If you're strong enough, you can create the changes you want to see. Yagura thought about it, and then remembered how the Kiri shinobi overpowered him and forced him into becoming a Jinchuuriki. The Mizukage could make any changes he wanted, and he too became one by being stronger than the others. He slowly began to nod. You're right. I need to get stronger. I'll train so hard that I'll become stronger than everyone else. Then I'll force them to change. The masked man nodded, but added to what he said. You'll certainly need that kind of power. However, there's more. Controlling information is also power. You must be able to keep information to yourself, by using tricks and lies. You must be able to pretend you are something you are not, or pretend you know something you don't, or pretend you don't know something you do know. This way, you can control the flow of information. This is also power. Yagura thought about what he just heard, as he stared into his reflection in the water. Become powerful, boy. Become powerful enough to bring the changes you want to see. And become powerful enough to punish those who use their power to create this unfair world. Strong enough to punish those who have wronged you. Yagura nodded as he continued to stare at his reflection. Yes. You're right. I'll make all of those bad people pay for what they've done. Yes. I see it now. I'll pretend to be fine with this terrible system until I'm strong enough. I'll gain their trust, and then make them pay when they least expect it, he shouted out, starting to form a hysterical smile on his face. Thanks. When Yagura turned to thank the masked man and ask for his name, he found the man gone without a trace. He looked around for him for a while, but never found him. Still, Yagura wasn't too bothered. He had a goal for his life now. An ambition he must accomplish. He would endure all the hardships that came his way and do whatever he needed to do until he realized this dream. I promise I'll bring the end of the bloody mist, Mask-san. I'll bring equality to this village, he whispered to himself. His face grew darker, as a sadistic smile took over his face. And I'll start by showing those bloodline users what they deserve. End flashback. Yagura bellowed and thrashed around harder than ever as he remembered the promise he had made to the masked man, and to himself. No. I must finish what I've started, he roared as he tried to free himself. Naruto was forced to put more chakra into his jutsu, in an effort to hold down Yagura. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled to maintain his jutsu. As difficult as it was, Naruto was able to keep him in check. Yagura began to panic, when he felt the Baijuu chakra slipping away from him. His gigantic form began to shrink. No! Yagura screamed out as he began to return to his human form. Before Yagura could recover from the shock of transforming, Naruto charged at Yagura. Odama Rasengan. Big Ball Rasengan. He smashed Yagura with the big ball of rapidly spinning chakra, and sent him flying into the post of one of the torii gates that had held down the Sanbi form of Yagura. Yagura coughed up blood as he fell to the ground. The clothes on his chest had been completely torn to pieces, and he was cut up pretty badly, as he had been unable to completely cover himself with his coral armor in time. Naruto watched Yagura slowly pick himself up, and noticed something. There. On his chest. There's the seal holding the Sanbi. Naruto realized. Yagura was shaken up still, and unable to completely focus, but when he saw Naruto form another Odama Rasengan, he began to mold his chakra in advance to be able to use his coral jutsu. Naruto reached into his pocket, and pulled out a smoke bomb with his free hand. He threw the bomb towards Yagura, who shot it out of the air with a bullet of coral. Several regular kunai emerged out of the smoke, aimed at Yagura, but Yagura knew a static defense would be walking into Naruto's trap. He wasn't sure if his coral armor could hold out against the Odama Rasengan, and he didn't want to find out the hard way. He instead dodged them or blocked them with coral partially covering his arms to stay mobile, and kept an eye out for Naruto. He heard a coat flapping, and looked up to see Naruto coming down at him with a Odama Rasengan. He had apparently jumped up high out of view using the smoke and kunai as a distraction to attack Yagura. It was a good distraction, and might have gotten him if he was less attentive. However, it was a double-edged sword for Naruto, as it was harder to maneuver yourself in the air. Yagura grinned as he used the coral on his arm as a starting point to form a spear of coral. Using his superior reach, Yagura was able to pierce Naruto in the stomach. However, Yagura was left surprised when Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke. Yagura looked over the battlefield, trying to locate Naruto. He must have used the smoke bomb as a distraction to hide himself. Where could he be? Yagura thought to himself as he looked around. Suddenly, one of the kunai on the floor next to him transformed into Naruto with a puff of smoke, and caught Yagura by surprise. Gagyo-fun. 5-element seal. Purple flames lit up on each of Naruto's fingers, which he aimed at Yagura's seal on his chest. Even as Yagura was caught by surprise, he was able to quickly respond and shot out a spear of coral out of his arm, and towards Naruto. Naruto was about to dodge, when he suddenly felt immense pain in his entire body, as the unfiltered nature chakra from the pearl had briefly overwhelmed his reduced reserves of chakra, and damaged his body. His training in pain endurance meant he only froze up for a fraction of a second, like how someone feeling a heartburn might, but that second was all it took for Yagura to stab him with his sharp branch of coral. Naruto was still able to avoid a fatal blow, shifting his body to have the coral pierce his shoulder instead of his chest. Even with the coral in his shoulder, he continued to push himself closer to Yagura, which made the coral pierce deeper into his shoulder, but put him into reach to slam his hand into Yagura's seal. When the Gagyo-fun was applied to Yagura's seal, he lost all connection to the Sanbi's powers, including the coral. Yagura was sent to the ground, and the coral that had begun to grow around Naruto's shoulder stopped growing. What did you do?" Yagura screamed out as he stood up, seeing that he couldn't access any of the powers granted to him by the Sanbi, and struggled to channel his own chakra as well. Naruto just smirked. He wasn't in the mood for explaining anything. The smirk fell off his face, as his body was once again racked with pain, as the pearl had poisoned his body with the nature chakra. This time, the pain was worse, and lasted longer, and Naruto fell to his knees and coughed up blood. He would have already been suffering from chakra exhaustion, but the poisoning from the pseudo-sage mode made it worse, and caused him unbearable pain, causing him to writhe on the ground in agony. Yagura saw this as an opening, and drew a kunai. It wouldn't take any chakra to slice a throat. Naruto saw this and tried to get up, but there was no strength left in him, and he stumbled as the pseudo-sage mode faded away. Yagura grinned madly, as he began to charge at Naruto, hoping to kill him quickly before he recovered. "This is the end of the line for you, Uzumaki," Yagura yelled as his kunai began its downward arc towards Naruto's neck. "Futten, acid cannon jutsu." A female voice rang out. That was the last thing Yagura heard, before a corrosive glob of acid shot off his arm, and began dissolving the wound it formed. Yagura's kunai fell short of its mark, and Yagura stumbled and fell, as the pain from having parts of your body dissolve was unbearable. "Why you bitch," Yagura yelled as he wobbled back to his feet. He was pissed that Mei interfered in his fight against Naruto, only jumping in when he was weakened. "How did you like that? A taste of your own medicine? You waited until I was nearly about to collapse before you hopped in, and now, I have the pleasure of doing the same," Mei said with a grin as she walked up to the now one-armed Yagura. I'll kill you for that." Yagura screamed as he tried to attack, but with one arm and no access to his Baijuu chakra, he was unable to do anything, and fell when Mei gave him a fierce low kick to the side of his knee. "You look real pitiful right now. Can't accept what's coming for you, can you?" Mei said to Yagura, as she slowly formed hand seals. "No. It's not over yet. I still have so much left to do," Yagura cried out as he crawled towards a kunai on the ground, hoping to throw the kunai at Mei, and maybe kill her. "This is the end of the line for you, Yagura. Your reign of tyranny is over. Yotan, Yokai no Jutsu. Lava release, melting apparition technique." Yagura's screams pierced through the night sky, as Mei's lava burned and melted him to death. His screams announced the end of a civil war that had lasted for nearly a decade. At first, the loyalists were in shock at the abrupt end of a fight they thought was on their side the whole time, but then they realized the implications of Yagura's death. The symbol of the loyalists was dead, and so were his policies and visions. They threw down their arms and surrendered. The rebels quickly moved in to bind the surrendering loyalists, and cheers celebrating their final victory rang out loudly from all over the place. The war that had laid Kiri to waste had finally come to an end. Time would eventually help people heal, but scars that would never fade away were left both in the hearts and bodies of the people involved. The lands that the battles were fought were just as scarred, and even the gates of Uzushio was heavily scarred from the battle that took place this night, which left thousands dead. Only the acrid smell of Yagura's sizzling body served as a funerary incense for the thousands of shinobi that died. In the midst of the celebration, two figures stood over Naruto, who went unconscious just after seeing Mei kill Yagura. "What should we do with him, Mei-sama?" Ao asked Mei. "He's far too dangerous, Mei-sama. Look at what he was able to do tonight. He killed nearly 1,000 shinobi by himself, and nearly defeated a perfect Jinchuuriki on his own. If we were to meet him on the battlefield as enemies." Mei knew Ao had a point. They would never get another chance like this to kill him. They could easily blame his death on Yagura too. She was once again forced with having to choose between what she wanted, and what would be best for Kiri. "Ao. Get some men to carry him. We're taking him to Kiri," Mei ordered. Chapter 37, The Bloodline Rebellion Part 8. With Naruto. Before he could even see her signature red hair, he was greeted by her signature loud voice. "Ni-chan." That one word was enough to catch the blonde's attention. "Narumi-chan." Naruto greeted his younger sister with a wide smile that only she ever got to see. The redhead ran towards her brother and jumped with her arms spread wide, flying towards his open arms, as she had done ever since she could run. Naruto had missed his sister terribly, so when he finally saw her again, his heart felt whole again. Everything was going great, until Naruto felt his body move on its own. A blue ball of rapidly swirling chakra formed on his right hand. "No. Narumi. Watch out." Naruto tried to warn, but it was too late. The redhead was already in the air, heading straight towards him, not expecting for even a second that her beloved brother would ever hurt her. As hard as he tried to stop his body, he found that he couldn't, and the Rasengan was driven straight into Narumi's chest. The spinning ball of chakra did exactly what it was designed to do. It tore a hole through her chest, exploding out the back, leaving a messy, gaping hole in the back that was several times bigger than the entry wound. "No!" Naruto screamed in shock and pain, when he saw his adorable sister basically torn apart, held together by strips of skin and muscle. She collapsed on the floor, face down. Blood began to pool all around her. Naruto, being able to move his body again, ran towards her, to see if there was anything he could do to save her life. "And Narumi? No. Please." He was a wreck as he looked over her helplessly, not knowing how to help her. He was surprised when Narumi suddenly jerked her head up to face him, her neck bending unnaturally at a 90-degree angle to face him while her body was still laying flat on the ground. Blood was pouring out of her eyes, nose, and mouth, and her eyes were wide open, as if she didn't have any eyelids. "Why did you kill me, Ni-chan? Why?" she asked in an echoing voice. Naruto tore at his hair. What was going on? Why was this happening? "No. Narumi. I swear I didn't mean to. My body. It moved on its own." "Why did you kill me, Ni-chan?" Narumi asked again in a louder voice, as she was raised to her feet inexplicably, as if she were picked up by an invisible hand. The hole in her torso was dripping with blood, and reminded Naruto of what he had done. "Was it because I'm a demon?" Narumi asked, though her voice seemed to enter his ear directly like a whisper, instead of coming from her mouth. "No. I never saw you as a demon, and I never will." Naruto screamed back. "Then why were you secretly training to fight demons? Why were you training to kill me?" Narumi asked. Naruto was left speechless, his eyes looking at his feet in shame. "Why did you try to kill me?" Narumi shouted as she appeared in front of Naruto's face, their faces almost touching. Naruto fell to the ground in shock and fear, as Narumi was replaced by the dark red, chakra cloak form of the Sanbi, who still had the hole in its chest. She started to form a black Rasengan in her clawed hands, as she looked down at him. Naruto remained silent as the Rasengan came at him. Time seemed to slow down, as he faced his death. Suddenly his perspective changed to a third-person view of the scene. Only that it was Narumi who was in his place, and the one covered in Baijuu chakra was him. He could see the fear in her violet eyes as she looked at the loving brother she trusted, betraying her trust in him and coming in to kill her. "No. Narumi!" Naruto screamed helplessly, as he ran towards the two to try to prevent her death. No matter how much he ran, the distance between them never seemed to get any closer. The Rasengan was about to tear through her small frame again, when Naruto woke up from his nightmare. "No. Narumi!" He jerked up into a sitting position, with sweat pouring down his face. His eyes quickly scanned his surrounding to see if any of the things he had seen was still around him. He was relieved to find out it was just a dream. A terrible dream, but still just a dream. Slightly more relaxed now, he looked around and saw the concerned face of Haku sitting by his bed, and Suigetsu and Kimimaro sitting at a table close by. Naruto-sama. You're awake, Haku shouted out in relief. I'll go tell Mei-sama. Suigetsu informed the others before he ran out of his room. Naruto looked around to see where he was. Judging by the white linoleum floors and the sterile-looking room around him, he guessed he was in a hospital, though judging by the unfamiliar look, it wasn't in Konoha. What happened? Where am I? How long was I out for? Naruto asked with a raspy voice, as his throat was parched from not drinking water for several days. You're in a hospital in Kiri, Naruto-sama. Haku responded with a small smile. You were unconscious for several days from severe chakra exhaustion, and what seems to be chakra poisoning. Naruto nodded as he took in the information. Water. I need some water. He croaked in his raspy voice. Haku nodded and left the room to get water. So how are you feeling, Naruto-sama? Kimimaro asked. Naruto tried to move his body, which was stiff after being in bed for several days. His shoulder where the coral had pierced was aching from the surgery he had gotten while he was unconscious, and his wrist still hurt to move, as the skin around his right wrist had been burned off from the Baijuu chakra. To put it politely, I feel like crap. Naruto responded to the bone user's question. Kimimaro gave him the slightest of smirks. I see. Mei, Suigetsu, and Haku came through the door together, a few moments later. Naruto-sama. Here's your water. Haku told Naruto as she handed him the glass of water. Naruto nodded in thanks, as he took the water he so desperately craved. When he finished drinking, Mei began speaking to him. So, how are you feeling, Naruto-kun? She asked. I felt better. He responded before he groaned from the pain of trying to move. So, what happened? The last thing I can remember is my fight with Yagura. His memories of how the fight ended were a bit fuzzy, as he was in extreme pain and almost unconscious when he collapsed. How did it end? Well, I did what you told me to do. I waited for you to make an opening, and then hit him when he didn't expect it, Mei said with a grin. I see. Naruto responded as he nodded slowly. So, the war is over then? Naruto asked. Mei giggled before she responded. He looked cute with that confused look on his face, and all of the bandages that were plastered here and there. Yes, Naruto-kun. The war is over. How else do you think us dirty rebels were able to get into Kiri? I see. So, everything is all right then? Naruto asked. Mei's smile turned a bit flat as she contemplated how to respond. Well, as all right as you would expect a village torn by war for 8 years to be, I suppose. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Mei's response. So, what does that mean exactly? Within the 8 years the war had raged, bloodline clans were nearly brought to extinction, and Yagura's draconian policies left hundreds of people executed for sympathizing with the victims of his genocide. Thousands more were left in extreme poverty with the economy that was destroyed under his reign. Hundreds of people fled Kiri as refugees, and would never return, taking their knowledge, skills, and expertise with them. The Sanbi had been killed with Yagura, and even the Jinchuuriki of the Rakubi had abandoned Kiri. Only 4 of the 7 swordsmen were still present, 2 of them still being Jinan who recently joined the order. To put it simply, Kiri had a drastically reduced population, and an economy and military that was left in shambles. Even the huge infusion of cash that Naruto had donated to the rebel cause via Zabuza would not be enough to cover everything. Mei hated showing Kiri as being weak to an outsider, but there was little to gain right now by bluffing to Naruto. He'd seen enough already, and a quick look outside the hospital would reveal everything anyway. Mei sighed and ran her hands through her hair. We've got a lot of work to do before Kiri is stable enough to start rebuilding our village and economy. It will take a lot of time and money that we currently don't have right now. We need to meet with the Water Daimyo to get officially recognized as the legitimate governing regime of Kiri, and that won't happen until we get this place fixed up enough that he feels safe visiting. So not so great. I see. Naruto replied as he began to think. Could his mission be considered complete? Could he just return home now? He glanced out the window and saw a scene that reminded him of what Wave was like under Gato, though slightly better. Although he wasn't tasked with helping with the rebuilding effort, he had grown somewhat attached to the rebels of Kiri, and leaving them in this state sort of felt wrong. Is there something I can do to help before I go back to Konoha? Naruto asked. Haku, Kimimaro, and Suigetsu frowned when they were reminded that Naruto had to leave them eventually. They had grown quite attached to him, and wanted him to stay. Mei, too, had a strange expression on her face which reflected her complex emotions regarding the situation. She had grown fond of Naruto, but she also had considered some pretty terrible stuff regarding him previously, which made her feel a little guilty, especially with how much Naruto wanted to help. Flashback. Mei was deep in thought with her eyes on Naruto's unconscious form, which was lying in the medical bay of Yagura's flagship, which the rebels had captured after their victory on the gates of Uzushio. Mei-sama. I know he's been of great use to us in the war, but he's really too dangerous. I've never seen anyone so powerful, and he's still so young. We don't know how strong he'll end up being. If we end up on opposing sides, we won't have any way to stop him, Ao whispered to Mei. Mei knew what he was saying was true, but she was torn inside. She would be getting rid of a potential threat to Kiri if she killed him, but how could she kill him after he was put in this state by trying to help them in the first place? Haku was sitting next to Naruto, as she had been for the past day. She had been watching over Naruto without sleep, making sure that he was okay. She had personally bandaged his injuries, and had even removed the coral in his shoulder and stitched it up as best as she could. She never left his side, even eating at the table next to his cot, and only left to go to the bathroom. So Haku was present when Ao warned Mei, and heard enough of what Ao was whispering to be absolutely shocked. Ao-sama. How could you say that? You'd kill Naruto-sama when he's unconscious? After all he's done for us? How could you even think that? Haku gasped out. Do what now? Suigetsu asked as he entered the room with Kimimaro, coming with Haku's food. Kill who? It's nothing for you three to be concerned with, Ao said gruffly. Haku ignored him and looked at Mei's face, who looked deeply torn. Mei-sama. You can't possibly be considering this. Think about all he's done for us. Haku pleaded. It wasn't like Mei was itching to kill Naruto. She was actually quite fond of him. Maybe in more ways than she would even like to admit. But Ao did have a point. A shinobi who could quite possibly take on a whole village by himself was too big of a threat to be ignored, especially since he wasn't from their village. When Haku saw that Mei wasn't responding, and looked like she was actually contemplating it, she subconsciously moved to position herself between Naruto and the duo of Mei and Ao. While Mei was stuck in an internal battle and trying to decide, Ao noticed Haku's positioning. What do you think you're doing? Don't forget you're a shinobi of Kiri. Remember where your loyalty lies. Don't make any foolish decisions you'll regret. He sternly told Haku. I know that. But he's a friend of Kiri. Look at all he's done for us. He personally risked his own safety to save us multiple times. I won't let you harm him, she yelled out. Ao was furious. How short-sighted was this girl? He was here because his Hokage ordered him to do so. Do you not see that this same Hokage could order him to attack Kiri, and he'd obey? Even if this Hokage decides to become allies with Kiri, who's to say if the next Hokage will be just as friendly? If he decides to attack Kiri with Konoha, do you really think we can hold them off? They're strong enough as it is. If Naruto joins, who's going to hold him back? You? Are you going to ask him to remember the good times we had together and betray Konoha? Or do you think Konoha will be our best friends forever? Haku was unable to respond, but remained firmly rooted to her position. You foolish girl. This is the world of shinobi. No alliances last forever. Your friend today can be your enemy tomorrow. Just look at our village. Your neighbor who lent you sugar one day is killing your family the next day. You should know this better than anyone. When we see a threat, we should get rid of it when we have the chance, because we may never get it again. Ao chastised. He had experienced more than his share of betrayals and misses opportunities. If he had killed Yagura when he had the chance in the past, he might have never become Mizukage, and destroy Kiri like he did. Well, I'd rather deal with an issue that might never arise when it actually happens, instead of becoming a backstabbing traitor, and becoming the danger we are looking out for. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not be that neighbor who borrows sugar today, and kills your family tomorrow. Haku fired back, glaring at him uncharacteristically rudely. Why you, insolent pup, Ao shouted furiously as he raised his hand to strike her. His hand was caught midair by Suigetsu. Don't you even think about hitting my teammate, Suigetsu said with a stern look. Ao yanked his hand out of the teen's grip. Why don't you calm down, old-timer? Suigetsu said with a smirk, with his hand threateningly hovering over his sword. Ao didn't miss this, and reached for his own kunai. His eyes flicked around in their sockets, watching Haku and Suigetsu. He was a capable shinobi, and knew how to handle those two. The one he was worried about the most was the one with his arms crossed in the back of the room, watching the scene with an unreadable expression. He didn't know how Kimimaro would react, and he wasn't sure if he could take him on with the others. The tension was palpable, as Suigetsu and Ao had their standoff, both waiting for the other to make the first move. "All right, you idiots. That's enough now. Everyone calm down before I get angry," Mei calmly ordered. Everyone in the room knew she could easily beat everyone in the room at the same time, and her authority was unquestioned. They immediately stood down. Ao humphed as he walked to Mei's side. "These insolent pups. Back in my day, Jinan minded their own business, and did as they were told." "Well, Ao, this isn't back in your day, and some of these Jinan are Jinan only in name," Mei responded. "Mei-sama, please don't hurt Naruto-sama. You and I both know he's a good person. He's always gone above and beyond to help us, and I've seen him help the poor and the weak, even when there was no reward for it. He won't betray us. I just know it," Haku pleaded again. "Well, unfortunately, him being a good person doesn't mean anything. He is an excellent shinobi, and as such, will do what his Hokage requires of him," Mei responded. Haku's mouth opened in shock. No. There was no way. What was she going to do if Mei wanted to kill Naruto? Mei gave Haku a small smile as she ruffled her hair. "However, I'm going to go against logic and trust my gut this one time. While it isn't very shinobi-like, I'd rather not revert back to backstabbing already. The days of Kiri being a barbaric, backwater village are over. It's time we start something new." Haku's face brightened considerably, and she gave Mei a huge smile. She knew she could count on Mei. Ao knew this could come back to bite them in the rear in the future, but he decided to follow his leader's decision. She had led them on the right path this far, and he'd continue to trust her leadership. Mei and Ao turned to leave, but not before Mei gave Naruto one last lingering look. End flashback. "Why don't you start by getting better, We'll look for things you can help with when you're able to leave the hospital," Mei said with a smile, as she gently caressed one of his cheeks with her hand. She left a flustered Naruto in the hospital, sure to have left him thinking about her for a while, with the way she was swaying her hips as she walked out of his room. At least, he better be thinking about her, Mei thought. Especially after he so rudely barged into her thoughts and stayed there uninvited for the past few days, ever since he first visited her dreams a few nights ago. Back in Konoha. He, Fu, you always have the best ideas," Narumi giggled to herself as she walked down the busy streets of Konoha to go shopping, both to buy gifts to send to Fu with her monthly letters, but also to buy some stuff for a prank that Fu suggested. She entered a store to buy some stuff for Fu's pet beetles. Let's see. She already has this. I don't think this will fit in her bag. Narumi mumbled to herself as she browsed through the items for pet bugs. "It is nice to see you again, Narumi-san. What brings you to this store?" Shino asked when he saw Narumi at the store. "Oh. Hey Shino. I was just looking for stuff I can send to my friend," Narumi replied with a wide smile. "Sending it to a friend? I infer that they do not live in Konoha then?" Shino guessed. "That's right. She lives in Taki. I've been writing letters and sending her some stuff, and she does the same for me," Narumi told Shino. "You would send a girl gifts from the store for insect care?" Shino asked with an eyebrow raised in confusion. From what he had observed, girls hated bugs and anything to do with bugs. Narumi asked as she looked through some more items. "Oh yeah. She loves bugs. She has like 4 pet beetles. I was seeing if I could get something for them here," she told Shino, before she realized Shino was an expert on bugs, and would have a good idea of what to get. She decided to ask for his opinion. Shino, however, zoned out the moment he heard that Narumi's friend liked bugs, and even raised her own. A girl? Who likes bugs? What? Where? How could he meet her? Shino. Hey! Did you hear me? Narumi yelled, while waving a hand in front of Shino's distracted face. "Did you say your friend, a female, was interested in bugs?" Shino asked. "Yeah. That's why I asked you my question like 3 times, Narumi said with a huff. "I apologize. I was distracted. What was your question?" Shino asked. "What do you think is a good gift for someone who raises beetles? She already has a nice log and branches for them, so I was thinking if there was something else she could put in the cage for them." Narumi wondered. Shino felt his heart beating faster than it had ever beat before. Oh, if only this girl lived in Konoha. "Might I suggest beetle jelly? It makes a great treat for them. It is better than just slices of fruit, as fruit causes fruit fly to appear in their cages. The beetle jelly, however, does not. It is easy to clean up as well, and it comes in a variety of flavors that can keep for quite a long time if kept in a refrigerated area. Some flavors include apple, mango, oranges, pineapple, watermelon, and... Okay. That seems like a great gift. Thanks, Shino. Narumi interrupted when Shino's explanation started to get a little too long. She grabbed several bags of different flavors of beetle jelly and put them in her basket. Thanks, Shino. You were a ton of help. I owe you big time. Let's hang out tomorrow. Gotta go. Bye. Narumi thanked Shino as she headed to the cashier. And honeydew melon. Shino sighed. He wished there was some cute girl that lived here that liked to talk about insects as much as he did. Hi. Narumi greeted the cashier with a smile, as she unloaded her basket at the cash register. The cashier gave Narumi a look, and went straight to scanning the items without replying back, or even giving her a smile, rather scowling when she saw Narumi. Okay, Narumi said as her smile melted away. Why were so many people so rude to her? They had always been cold towards her, but they were straight up rude to her now. That'll be 6,000 Ryo. The cashier said as she rolled her eyes. 6,000? Are you sure? The tag said each bag only cost 500 Ryo. I only have 6 bags. Look. Apple, mango, orange, pineapple, watermelon, and... Narumi was cut off by the cashier. Look, you can either pay the 6,000 Ryo, or you can just shop elsewhere. But why? What did I even do? Narumi asked, feeling upset at how she was treated. What did she ever do to her? The cashier scoffed. Humph. As if you don't know. Besides, it's not like you can't afford to pay a little extra with all of the extra taxes we have to pay to your clan. Narumi was confused. What was this woman talking about? 6,000 Ryo was thrown on the cash register. I believe that should cover the dishonest prices you have set for my friend here, Shino said to the register as he walked up to the scene. Shino, Narumi said, feeling relieved to see someone who is on her side. Do you have any idea what she is talking about? I believe it might have something to do with the new taxes that were put in place not too long ago, but I am not certain. Let's go. I am no longer in the mood to buy anything from this store. Shino and Narumi were leaving the store with Narumi's purchases, before Shino stopped at the door. If you keep raising prices unfairly for my friend here, I'll let my clan know that we should start looking for another store with more honest business practices to make our purchases. The cashier paled. The Aburame made up the majority of their customer base. She nodded with a deep bow, apologizing to Shino, as she tried to give him back his money, which he ignored and left. Thanks, Shino. I really owe ya, Narumi said as she walked down the street with Shino, now conscious of all of the negative looks that she was getting from people. It is fine. After all, you would have done the same for me. Shino replied. Narumi smiled when she heard that. She was thankful for her friends, as few as they were. However, Shino said in a quiet voice that caught Narumi's attention. If you'd really like to pay me back, you could tell me more about this friend of yours, he said with a blush, as he hid the bottom half of his face in the raised collar of his coat. Narumi's smile widened. Oh? Is our little Shino-kun all grown up now? She asked mischievously. At a council meeting in Konoha. Hiruzen pinched the bridge of his nose, as the volume kept rising in the council room as the council members argued. He couldn't wait to pass the position of Hokage on. He was tired of dealing with these grown-up children, and he was definitely tired of hearing them complain about the taxes that were raised to pay back their debt to Naruto. Hokage-sama, isn't there some other way we could pay him back? Perhaps give him a promotion? Or give him some land at the outskirts of town? One counselor asked. He's already a jonin, and was one of the highest-ranking members of Onbu. What promotion do you speak of? Hiruzen asked. The counselor sat back down quietly. We were quick to borrow money from him, even without his permission. And this was when he needed the money as well. To sit here and listen to you all complain about paying him back? Hiruzen gave everyone a glare. That's enough. I wish to hear no more on this matter. The tax will remain until the debt is paid. The discontent counselors settled down in their seats as they grumbled. Now, we've got other more important issues to deal with, don't we? Hiruzen asked. Shikaku stood up to give his report. We've been getting more and more missions from the daimyo of the Land of Wind. This might prove to be problematic. What's wrong with more missions? Doesn't more missions mean more money for the village? Mebuki asked. Well, it certainly is good for our economy, but it's putting a strain in our relations with Suna. The missions that were supposed to go to them are now coming to us, and I'm sure they won't be too happy about that. Shikaku responded. And what of it? That will only mean they are getting weaker, while we get stronger. They already stand no chance against us. If they try anything foolish, it will only give us the casus belli that we need to put them in their place, and impose a new treaty that will be to our favor. Danzo commented. It made no sense to have an equal alliance with a much weaker village in the first place. Hyashi added. If they attack first, we can break the treaty without having to do it ourselves and tarnishing our image. Many of the councillors agreed, and talks of forcing Suna into vassalage were discussed. Hiruzen glared at Danzo. Of course, he would be the one to start a discussion of fighting a war to gain power. And what of the disruption of the balance between the 5 villages? Do you think the other villages will stand idle as they watch a war break out between our villages? We've only just recovered from the destruction of the village, and now you'd have us plunged into another war? Hiruzen inquired. Some of the councillor agreed that Hiruzen had a point, and began to debate with the other councillors on the pros and cons of what was being discussed. Hiruzen sighed as he watched the scene. Why were people so obsessed with fighting and gaining more power? Was he the weird one for desiring peace? Was he getting too old? He knew the answer to that last question. Yes, he was way too old for this nonsense. His thoughts went to Naruto, who he hoped would succeed him, if things went according to plan. How are you doing, my boy? Are you well? How goes the war? Hiruzen wondered to himself. Due to the top-secret nature of the mission that he sent Naruto on, he had not received any messages from Naruto, and had no idea what was going on. He wasn't even sure if Naruto was dead or alive. Like Amigakure, news from Kirigakure was scarce due to the civil war in the area. Rarely anyone went into Kiri territory, as they could die at any moment by being caught in the crossfire, and even less came back out. That meant no news came out of Kiri, and no one even knew that the civil war was over. All he could do was believe in Naruto's ability to always complete his missions successfully. In Kiri, days after Mei's visit to the hospital, Mei sighed as she watched some of her people cataloging the goods that were in Yagura's storehouse. Goods that he had seized from the people he had massacred. There was a literal mountain of scrolls and other things he had stolen, attesting to just how brutal his reign had been. Just how many people did you kill to get all of these? She wondered to herself sadly, as she looked for anything that might have been from her clan. Her thoughts were interrupted by Naruto clearing his throat to get her attention, standing at the doorway. A smile formed on her face almost automatically when she saw Naruto. Ah, look who it is. Hello, Naruto-kun. Hello, Mei. What are you up to? Naruto asked. Oh, just sorting some stuff. Mei replied as she gestured to the pile of stuff in the storehouse. Mind if I help? Naruto offered as he stepped into the room. Mei shrugged. I guess so. Put the jutsu scrolls over here, the storage scrolls over there, weapons over there, and other valuables in that pile over there. The two of them began to sort through the items with the others that were present. As Naruto looked through some of the items, he was impressed by some of the jutsu that were contained in the scrolls. Say, what do you intend on doing with all of these things here after they're sorted? Naruto asked as he looked through a scroll on some water-release jutsu. Return them to their original owners if we can, or at least to their clans. Mei replied, as she thought about what to do. For the things that don't have any living owners anymore, I suppose we'll use them for Kiri, either adding them to our inventory or selling them off for money. You don't suppose you'll be willing to sell some of the jutsu scroll here, would you? Naruto asked. I'll have to think about that. Mei replied. Why? See something that interests you? A few scrolls here and there. But with so many things in here, I'm bound to find more. Ao scooted over closer to Mei, so he could whisper to her quietly. Mei-sama, you wouldn't actually sell any of our jutsu to an outsider, would you? He could use these against us. Mei scoffed. Ao, if Naruto wanted to fight against us, these little jutsu here aren't the things we need to look out for. I'm sure we've got bigger problems by that point. Besides, we could use the money, unless you have a way of coming up with funds to pay our shinobi, rebuild infrastructure, fund the academy, and restart our trade and industries. She replied. Naruto was able to overhear parts of their conversation, and smiled. Money was no object for him. How about I pay 500,000 ryo for each jutsu? If they're particularly powerful or rare, I'll pay double or even more. That caught Mei and Ao's attention. That changed things. That would be like an A-rank mission for each jutsu, or even an S rank for a more powerful one, which could potentially amount to a lot of money that could be used in Kiri's rebuilding process. Would you settle for copies instead? Mei asked. Naruto nodded. Of course. And I'll pay for any other interesting trinkets that I might find that you're willing to part with. Mei decided to let him buy some of the jutsu that were more widely known amongst the population in Kyuri. Secret jutsu from clans, however, she would keep for the clans, as a reward for following her through the civil war, and also because she felt it was the right thing to do. They continued to sort through the piles of items for the next few hours, with Naruto selecting a few jutsu he was interested in. However, the jackpot for him came when he found a larger scroll. What is this? Naruto said to himself as he unrolled the scroll. It was a summoning scroll. His thoughts immediately went to Narumi. A summoning contract as a gift to celebrate her promotion to Chunin would be perfect. Hey, Mei? How much would you want for this? Naruto asked as he handed Mei the summoning scroll. What is that? Mei asked as she took the scroll. She looked through the scroll and realized it was a summoning contract for a summons for a clan that had been wiped out. Ao was worried Mei might agree to give such a powerful tool like a summoning contract all for a bit of money, and watched her worriedly. More than any of the other jutsu he found, Naruto really wanted this scroll. He was willing to part with a huge chunk of Ryo to obtain this for Narumi. He was willing to give them jutsu or seals of his own if that's what it took. His hope, however, began to slip away when he saw Mei's expression. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. Mei began. That put the nail in the coffin for his hopes of getting this meaningful gift for Narumi. This is too valuable for us to part with, both from a military perspective and a cultural one. We can't sell off this last vestige of a clan that was once prominent here. Ah, I see. That makes sense. Naruto just waved it off like it wasn't a big deal, but he was sorely disappointed inside. He'd have to look for something else to give Narumi. Hopefully he'd be able to find something else here. Back in Konoha, in Root HQ. Danzo dismissed his informant from Suna who brought him news on Suna's economic struggles. It seemed Razo was forced to sell some of his gold dust to keep his village running, but that was clearly unsustainable. Unless he was able to solve the root of the problem, he was merely scooping water out of a sinking ship. Good. It seems like my connection in the Wind Daimyo's court has done exactly as I had hoped. Danzo thought to himself as he considered what was to come next. The first phase of his scheme involving Suna had gone off perfectly, with his connection convincing the Wind Daimyo to employ the cheaper services of Konoha. They can't afford to reduce the cost of their shinobi to compete with Konoha, due to the costs of raising shinobi forces in the desert, and reducing their upkeep will prove disastrous. If they do so, they'll lose many of their promising shinobi, which I'll recruit into Root. Danzo thought with a smirk. If they didn't cut wages and costs, which could possibly reduce Suna into a minor village, they would only be left with only one option: dealing with the competition that was stealing their lifeblood. Suna was on terrible terms with Iwa and Kumo from the last war, which was one of the main reasons Suna allied with Konoha in the first place, and Kyuri was still known to be embroiled in an idiotic, self-destructive civil war. Suna would be foolish to attack Konoha alone, but desperation leads people to do foolish things. However, it didn't really matter what choice Suna would make. Danzo planned to profit from whatever choice they made. If they didn't attack Konoha, they'd be pressured to seek aid from Konoha to keep their village afloat, which Danzo would use to slowly bring them under Konoha's rule. He also wasn't worried about Suna attacking. He knew Konoha was capable of easily defeating them. If they ended up attacking and managed to kill Hiruzen, he'd use his root forces to drive them off and win the gratitude of the village. Even if they failed to kill Hiruzen, he could still put the blame of the attack as Hiruzen's failure as a Hokage, making him lose support and possibly have him deposed. Now all there was to do was to make sure there weren't any other contenders for the seat. The next phase would be to remove each potential Hokage candidates from running against him, one way or another. Soon. Danzo mused. I'll lead this village to a golden era. I'll lead this village to stand above all others, as it was destined to be. In the markets of Kyuri. Naruto walked down the streets of Kyuri, trying to get some fresh air, and to possibly buy some souvenirs or gifts for his Jinan. Maybe if he was lucky, he could find something that Narumi would like as a gift for making it to Chunin. Sure, nothing here could compete with a summoning contract, but Kyuri was still known for its quality swords and metal-worked goods, so he hoped he could find something. However, after nearly an hour of searching, he noticed that he wasn't having much luck finding any quality products, due to the destroyed economy and the flight of many skilled workers from the village. What the village did have in excess instead were orphans. When Naruto saw the starving kids watching him buy the produce Kyuri had, he couldn't help but see himself and Narumi in them. One boy and his sister caught his attention in particular. The boy seemed to be much older than his sister, who looked like she was barely 5 years old. He held his sister's hand as he hungrily eyed the fruits that Naruto was buying, before the growling in his sister's stomach caught Naruto's trained ears. Naruto couldn't just walk on by and ignore the sight in front of him. It would make him like one of those people in Konoha who ignored Narumi and his struggles. "Hey there, kid. It looks like you could use some food," Naruto said to the older brother as he bent over to talk to the kid at eye level. The kid simply nodded, too shy and wary to speak to the stranger. "How about you do something for me, and I'll give you and your sister all the food you can eat. How does that sound?" Naruto asked as he gave him a warm smile to disarm the boy. What should I do?" the boy asked with wide eyes. "You got any parents, kid?" Naruto asked. The boy shook his head. "Live in an orphanage then?" The boy nodded. "Where's your orphanage? If you tell me where your orphanage is, and how many kids live there, I'll give you guys this bag of fruit I bought, and get you even more stuff," Naruto offered. It sounded too good to be true, but the boy wasn't in the position to be picky, so he decided to answer his question. "I live in that shack by the edge of town. Me, my sister Mitsuko, and around 18 other kids live with Hasegawa-san and his wife." "I see. Thanks for telling me. Here's the bag of fruit, just like I promised," Naruto said, as he handed the boy his bag of fruit. The boy received the bag with a huge smile, and immediately took out an apple and handed it to his sister, who was practically leaping with joy before she reached out eagerly to take the apple. "Thank you, stranger-san," the girl said with a smile that was missing a couple teeth. "You're the best. You can call me Naruto. Hope you guys enjoy your fruit," Naruto said warmly to the children, who ran off to share their gift with their friends. Naruto smiled as he watched the kids share, and decided he would do more for those kids. He'd look into some local grocers and bakers, and see if they could regularly send their products to the orphanages around town. He'd have them send the bill to him every month. Meanwhile, someone else was observing him from a distance too, with a smile on her face from watching the heartwarming scene. "Mei-sama," Ao called out as he came to her with a letter. "Yes? What is it, Ao?" Mei asked as she watched Naruto summoning clones to carry bags of food he was going to take to the orphanage where Mitsuko and her brother lived. "A letter. From the daimyo," Ao informed Mei, as he handed her the letter. She quickly turned around to take the letter from Ao's hand and read it. I see. That would be a much better idea," Mei commented as she read through the letter. "What is it, Mei-sama? What does the daimyo want?" Ao asked. "It looks like he's understanding of our situation, and wants to formalize my coronation as the Mizukage as soon as possible to stabilize Kiri. He understands that it's not the best time to visit Kiri, so he invited me to come to his palace instead, with an escort or companion of my choice." Her eyes went back to Naruto, who now had several bags of food that he was handing out to the orphans that surrounded him. "I think I know exactly who I'm going to take as my escort," Mei said with a smile. "Omake. Are you sure this is a mission?" Sasuke asked Narumi as he walked down the streets with his teammates. "Duh. Why else would we be wearing mission gear? Why else would all three of us be doing stupid chores?" Narumi replied. "It's just that, this mission seems quite strange. Kakashi-sensei isn't even here with us. Where is he anyway?" Sasuke wondered. "Who knows? For all we know, he'll just magically appear there, and when we ask him where he was, he'll say he came in advance to scan the area for traps and enemies, or give us some stupid excuse like that." Narumi replied. "That's such a terrible and ridiculous excuse, that I can imagine him actually saying that." Sasuke told Narumi. "I guess this is a mission then." "Of course. Why would I lie to you, Sasuke-chan?" Narumi said with a mischievous smile she failed to hide. Sasuke caught the smile and narrowed his eyes. He was suspicious of Narumi's behavior, but he couldn't quite put a finger on it. "I told you not to call me that. Also, let me see the mission details again. I don't get why the client would specifically ask me to carry the flowers." Narumi hid the scroll she was holding behind her back. "Hey! It's my turn to be the leader of the mission. I get to hold on to the scroll like you did last time. Isn't that the rules we agreed on, Hinata-chan?" Narumi asked Hinata. Hinata was caught off guard by Narumi bringing her into the situation. "Why yeah. That's what we said." "See? So I get to be the captain, and you get to hold the bouquet," Narumi said as she stuck her tongue out at Sasuke. He just rolled his eyes. Dealing with her shenanigans was just a part of being her friend. Looks like we're almost here," Hinata said as she pointed at the road sign. Narumi suddenly grabbed Sasuke's shoulder, causing him to turn around. Hey Sasuke-chan, I need to go to the bathroom real quick. And? Why don't you go? You don't need to tell me these things. Just be quick. I'll be here with Hinata. Sasuke replied. It might take a while, so why don't you just drop the flowers off without us? Narumi asked. Us? Why does Hinata have to go to the bathroom too? Sasuke asked suspiciously. 'Cause it's girl stuff. You wouldn't understand. You can handle a little D rank by yourself, right? Narumi asked as she began to hop, appearing to need to use the bathroom urgently. Sasuke rolled his eyes and sighed. Fine. I'll deliver the package, and come back. Hurry up and go. Thanks, Narumi yelled before she grabbed Hinata's hand and dragged her off to a nearby bathroom. Sasuke sighed again. Leave it to me to complete our missions. They should give me some of their pay since I'm doing all of the work. He grumbled as he headed towards the house they were delivering to. When Hinata was pulled into the bathroom by Narumi, she asked what was on her mind. Narumi-chan? Why are we doing this again? Narumi rummaged through her supplies to look for her binoculars. Sasuke's been acting so cocky and arrogant ever since he beat me in that stupid spar during training. He's been rubbing it in my face non-stop, so it's time for me to put him down a few pegs. She finally found her binoculars, and looked outside the window to observe Sasuke. Use your Byakugan to watch. This is going to be epic. Let's see now. This should be the house, Sasuke said to himself as he checked the address to make sure he was at the right place. He knocked on the door. Hello? Team 7 here with a delivery. He heard some rumbling and sounds of movement inside the house as he waited for the door to open. Sheesh. What's taking so long? Sasuke wondered, before the door slammed open. What do you want? The occupant of the house asked as she opened the door. Sasuke's face began to pale, and he almost dropped the bouquet he was holding. Anko looked at Sasuke's reaction and smiled. She loved the effect she had on him. These for me? She asked, as a snake shot out of her sleeve, and snatched the bouquet out of Sasuke's trembling hands and brought them to Anko. She inhaled the aroma of the flowers and sighed a satisfied sigh. Ah! That's the stuff. Sasuke still hadn't been able to say a word. He hoped he could sneak away while she was distracted with the flowers, but he lost his timing. Are these from you? Anko asked with a teasing smirk. She knew they weren't, but she wasn't about to let a chance to scare this kid slide. No. Sasuke replied, but Anko ignored him. Why thanks kid. I gotta show you my appreciation somehow. It's fine. Hope you enjoy the flowers. Gotta go, Sasuke stuttered as he tried to leave. I don't think so, pal. What kind of girl do you think I am? You think I won't repay such a sweet gesture? She asked as she grabbed onto him using her snakes. Get in here. Meanwhile, Narumi watched the scene from the bathroom with her pair of binoculars, before she fell on the ground laughing. Did you see his face? He looked like he saw a ghost. Oh my gosh. I'm dying. I can't breathe. Hinata watched the scene with her Byakugan with a concerned face. Unlike Narumi, she could see what was going on inside Anko's house as well. Sasuke sat in a chair shivering, tied to chair by snakes. His cheeks were covered in Anko's kisses. You sure know how to treat a girl. I think I'll place these flowers right here. What do you think, Sasuke-chan? Anko asked with an innocent-sounding voice. Why yes. That looks splendid. And now could I go? Sasuke stuttered. In a rush to leave so soon? You must stay for tea and snacks. I insist, Anko said with an ominous smile, as she flicked a stick of dengo towards Sasuke, which impaled the wall behind him, right next to his neck. Sasuke sat there trembling as Anko went about preparing her special tea. Narumi. I'll get you back for this. You'll regret the day you ever thought about pranking me like this. Even as Narumi rolled on the floor in laughter as Hinata explained what was going on, Hinata couldn't help but be concerned that this could be the start of something dangerous. She just hoped she wouldn't get pulled into this. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.